Hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media MegaCast. My name is Jess and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information to cover with you. Let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. Now, if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Also, keep in mind that if you have any tech issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you. So throughout today's MegaCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all of your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentation. And if we do not get to your question during the webinar, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us today will be following up with you after we wrap. All right, next up on our tour, there are going to be lots of cool aha moments in the MegaCast today, and if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's MegaCast will automatically get added to your post. And our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the Handouts tab for some resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection of solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. And if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes we will be giving away throughout the MegaCast today. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. You do need to be in attendance here live at the webinar in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all winners after we wrap the MegaCast today. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, hey, if you're not sure what those are, no problem. You can find the full T's and C's in that Handouts tab. Again, just click into the Handouts section, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember here today is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. In today's MegaCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all the questions asked after the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about winning, and we will get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the MegaCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going. So let's connect on social. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content right away after we wrap, you want to jump right in, make sure that you subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and to grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you're going to find a link to do that right there in that Handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected after we wrap today. Now, both you and your coworker, your friend, could win a prize, and we actually hold those drawings every month. So be sure you refer somebody awesome before you head out today. It could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your Handouts tab and fill out the application. Then the Actual Tech crew will match you with some vendors that we think you should be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you can choose to join in, like surveys or test running new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you will learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker in your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, how to prevent and recover. The site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. So go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books are going to work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and they are completely free, super easy. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in the handouts tab as well. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in, so let's get rolling.
All right, well, I hope you are all pumped up and ready for this topic today, because today we are getting into ransomware, best practices for prevention, mitigation, and recovery. Now, hey, I know that ransomware is absolutely top of mind for most of us, maybe all of us. All of the 2024 Outlook reports are agreeing that this is a major consideration for our teams and our organizations as a whole, but I also know that ransomware, even though it's a bit ubiquitous these days, can feel huge. Maybe a little overwhelming. It can feel a little too big to bite off a chunk. So today we are going to break this whole big topic into 3 pillars. We're going to look at prevention. We're going to look at mitigation. We're going to talk about recovery. We're going to explore those key industry tips and solutions to address each of these pillars. Now, in order to help us navigate this important conversation, we have top experts here with us from KnowBe4, Synology, Veeam, Commvault, Rubrik, and Lacework. These industry leaders are going to walk us through some of the hottest trends, those best practices, and everything that you need to consider as you plan your ransomware strategy, whether you're starting from scratch, enhancing, supercharging, wherever you're at. This is such an important topic. There are so many amazing sessions ahead of us, a lot to learn and dig into. So right now, get comfortable, settle in, get that cup of coffee or your hot tea, whatever you've got going this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're joining us from, and let's get rolling. Okay, I'm going to start out by saying hello. You know what? I'll throw some pictures up here so you can see our lovely faces. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm a moderator here at Actual Tech Media, and my fellow moderators, that's Scott Becker, Keith Ward, and Mackenzie Pudici, our newest moderator, are here with us today on live chat. In more exciting news, let's talk about prizes. Today on the MegaCast, you could win one of 5 Microsoft Surface Pro 9s, plus we have a $300 Amazon gift card that we will be giving away every 30 minutes. That's right, every 30 minutes. We've got all these awesome prizes in store for you, and if you have any questions about whether or not you meet the terms and conditions for a prize giveaway, you can head over to the handouts tab that we were talking about earlier. Click and scroll down. You'll find the full T's and C's linked for you there. We're going to have lots of other prizes. We've got some best question gift cards coming your way, so definitely check that out. Stay tuned. Lots of good prizes in store for you all. Well, speaking of good things in store for you, let's get into our keynote. We have one heck of a keynote lined up for you. This is one of my all-time favorite ransomware experts, a returning face here on the MegaCast at Actual Tech Media, and an all-around fascinating human. That is, of course, the one and only Lindsay Kay, Vice President of Threat Intelligence at Human Security. Let's get Lindsay on out here with me. We're going to turn on the cameras and get that rolling. Here we go. All right, Lindsay, thank you so much for being back here with us again. It is always so much fun to talk to you, especially when we get to talk about ransomware. There is so much to dig in here today. We're getting into best practices, which I love. I think that's such an important thing to talk about and to explore together. We've got prevention, mitigation, and recovery. This is a big topic. That's a lot to cover. I don't know how you're going to boil this down in a few minutes, Lindsay, but I believe in you. What do you got?
Sure. Okay. So, one issue that I think will be really interesting to watch in 2024 is looking at the innovation that threat actors will employ in order to make sure companies are going to pay a ransom. So, this technically spans all 3 pillars. Its effects and our perception of it are most evident in pillars 2 and 3, so mitigation and recovery. And prevention, mitigation, and recovery, as they relate to extortion, are something we focus substantially less on compared to technical solutions and approaches to looking at ransomware's encryption aspect. So, one highlight I want to kind of draw your attention to is in 2023. What I thought was really interesting is that we saw Alpha experiment with a new extortion tactic in which they filed a report about the ransomware attack with the SEC, citing that the victim was not following the SEC guidelines published in July about how soon after a breach the company has to disclose. So, this may not have been as entirely successful as the threat actor had hoped, But it shows us that ransomware threat actors are continuing to look for new and creative ways to extort companies into paying the ransom. And this is something that we're going to likely continue to see into 2024. So I wanted to just kind of mention that extortion is a much thornier issue to combat than most of the kind of encryption related issues that we focus on when we really talk about those three pillars. I also want to say that there will be several vendors here today who will do these issues far more justice, like this is a huge topic, than I can in this few minutes. So take the opportunity to hear from them soon. So let's start with prevention. So, a good approach to preventing a threat actor from attempting to extort an organization is looking to prevent the ransomware attack from occurring in the first place, given that many, though not all, extortion attempts occur as part of a ransomware attack itself. So, a few areas that I would recommend looking at here are kind of initial access. So, we talk a lot about that through vulnerability exploitation, any sort of use of credentials or social engineering based techniques like phishing or impersonation of IT staff or other company employees is actually pretty popular. Additionally, much of the threat of extortion has historically been amplified by the threat of leaking stolen data acquired from an organization. So, whether or not files have been encrypted. And this is often conducted using a lot of those benign tools. So, 7-zip or WinRAR in conjunction with services like MegaNZ, which makes detection of the exfiltration more complicated. So, while preventing data exfiltration will obviously look different for everyone because each environment is different, thinking about how to segment data in networks properly, as we've talked about before, as well as encrypt important data is super important. So here again, a lot of the best practices are ones we know and understand from the perspective of their benefit to preventing encryption of all of our resources. And since many of them are well understood and well documented, I'm not going to dive into depth on them today. So if you'd like, now we can kind of move into mitigation and how to mitigate extortion once it's taken place. So this is really highly dependent on the type of extortion that actually has taken place. But there are a few kind of general steps that will help you first understand the magnitude of the attack and then what you're dealing with to kind of get the lay of the land there. So first, trying to understand exactly which systems the threat actor had access to or were affected by the attack can provide some insight into which types of information they have and give you a sense of what could be used as they kind of engage in different types of extortion or kind of up level what they're doing right now. Um, Next, I'd say consulting any sort of disaster recovery or incident response plans that you have to make sure that the ransomware attack is properly mitigated from a technical perspective, and then any sort of remaining access that the threat actor might have to some of that data that they might use are cut off because you want to prevent them from obtaining any more data or insight that they could further use in their extortion attempts. And finally, engaging both internally with employees to discuss what happened and with any affected external groups, such as customers of the business, is super important. So, some experts that also advise that after a ransomware attack, really kind of being transparent is extremely important in helping the business avoid losing customer trust, and also suggest that having a press release actually drafted ahead of time might be a good idea. So this way, in the event that an attack happens and your resources and attention are kind of focused on actually mitigating and dealing with that, you can actually just kind of fill in those details and the high level language is already in place. So, kind of looking at our last pillar, so recovery. So, recovery from extortion also is dependent on exactly what the extortion attempt was. So, this is a little bit more difficult to kind of address in that general sense as we're talking about today. However, I would suggest that in addition to addressing the systems, the organization that were impacted by the attack, now is also a good time to engage in planning for your future. So, for example, looking to update any plans that you have in place to address different types of extortion and considering what preparations or future practice your team should undertake because they wanted to make sure that they become familiar with them, kind of practice before it becomes necessary. So you might also continue with the work done in the mitigation stage and continue to communicate with transparency, both internally and externally to your organization. So obviously, such a huge topic and not really a lot of time. But kind of my final thoughts here are extortion, especially through some of the more creative and as yet unknown methods, which I'm sure we will see, the threat actors have and will continue to employ, is a really difficult problem to address. But I hope this kind of session has given you a few things to think about as we continue on in 2024. Back over to you, Jess.
Yes. Thank you. Definitely so many good ideas here. I like some of the through lines between all of these prevention, mitigation, recovery. You know, the one thing, and Lindsay, I feel like we're a broken record on this because I know we've said this before, but it's not just setting it and forgetting it. It's putting in that, you know, constant reiteration, review process. I love your point about kind of setting up some things in advance so that you don't have to think about them when you're in the moment of it, when you're really in the thick of it. So this sort of forethought, this proactive thinking and proactive updating, I think is so important. And I'm seeing that, you know, as your best practice across all three pillars. So I think that's an awesome takeaway. And obviously, as you said, there's lots more to learn, lots more to dig into. We've got some great experts with us, so we're going to keep things rolling. But Lindsay, thank you for being here to kick us off today. It's always so much fun to see you.
Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun.
All right, and now we've got that poll up for you, and what we're wondering is, what is your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company? So are you thinking long-term, short-term? Are you looking way out in the future, thinking more big picture strategy, and you have no idea what the timeline is, or are you on a very tight timeline, you know exactly what you're looking for and when you need it? While you're doing that, I have a question for you all. Did anyone notice in the countdown video, we had those new awesome graphic novel characters? All our moderators are now animated graphic novel characters as part of the Text Layer series. If you did not notice that in our countdown video, come early next time for the first 5 minutes and watch those. I am so excited to be a superhero. I can't even tell you. We turned it into a little emoji on our internal chat, and I am so excited to be an animated character. It's a highlight of my life, y'all. I have to say. So check that out in the countdown video. Text layers, our moderators are animated characters now. Eric, you missed the countdown. It'll be there next time, I promise. You'll see that next time. DC and Marvel should be another poll. Yes, okay. we have a request. DC versus Marvel. That's one of our upcoming polls. I'm into it. I like it. All right, my friends. Well, thank you all for clicking on that poll, but now it is time to get into our MegaCast. And as you can all see, we are definitely starting out with a bang. This is a familiar face here on the MegaCast and an expert who always wows, and that is, of course, Roger Grimes, data-driven defense evangelist at KnowBe4. Roger, thank you for being here with us today to kick off this wonderful and exciting MegaCast. I know that you have great content lined up for us, as always, so I'm going to step back. I'm going to hand things on over to you. Take it away, Roger.
Thanks, everyone. I'm Roger Grimes. Thanks for showing up for the root causes of ransomware and how to defend. I hope to give you some of the most useful information that you've ever been given on ransomware in the next 20 minutes. At least that's my hope. If you haven't met me before, I'm Roger Grimes. I've been doing computer security for 34 years, earned all of those gray hairs. I've written 13 books and over 1,100 magazine articles, a lot of them on ransomware. My latest book is Ransomware Protection Playbook by Wiley. So this is a topic that I know a lot about and I think about a lot. I work for KnowBe4. We're the world's largest integrated security awareness training and simulated phishing platform vendor, meaning we help to make you and hopefully your coworkers less likely to be phished and socially engineered. But I want to talk about root causes of ransomware infections because you have to focus on how things are breaking in. Most defenders don't. You know, they're like, oh, I got to stop ransomware, prevent ransomware. You do. But ransomware is really not your problem. It's how ransomware broke in. Ransomware is an outcome of your real problem. How the ransomware got in, how it spread throughout your organization, that is your real problem. Meaning that the way that I like to explain it is that suppose I could wave a magic wand and make all ransomware go away in a second. There's no more ransomware after today. But if you allow bad things to get in the same way that the ransomware got in, you know, social engineering, unpatched software, password guessing, you know, man-in-the-middle attacks, whatever you chose to allow ransomware in, it's going to allow something else to get in if ransomware goes away. Instead of being ransomware to be a, you know, some type of password stealing Trojan, it would be a Trojan horse backdoor program, keylogging program, a hacker. So, you know, recognize that your problem isn't ransomware, it's how the ransomware got in. Focusing on ransomware as the problem is like worrying about your car's brakes after your entire car has been stolen. So you need to focus on the root causes of initial exploitation. And here they are. This is the 10 ways. I've been tracking this and keeping track of this for over 20 years. These are the 9 or 10 ways that any hacker or malware program can break in. If you think of every hacker or malware attack that has ever happened, it's in one of these, I think, 9 categories in this case. Sometimes I'll subdivide it into 10. But it's one of these 10 things, right? This is how the hackers or malware got in. And those things, what breaks in using those methods changes over time. Like, it used to be boot viruses, and it used to be USB viruses, and it used to be email worms, it used to be spam worms and things like that. It used to be crypto mining, things. These days, ransomware is all the rage. Well, what breaks in using those methods changes over time in popularity, but those methods don't change. When people tell me, oh, computer security is changing so fast every day. Well, not the ways that they're breaking into us. Those have pretty much remained relatively consistent for the last 30, 40 years, for the entirety of computer existence. And if you want to use what I call a data-driven defense, which is, hey, use the data of how you're most likely to be broken into and then create defenses that fight those methods, that's it in a nutshell. You have 9 or 10 different ways that any hacker malware program can break into your device, personal or otherwise, or your environment, your network. Figure out what are the most likely methods. Identify the methods of how they could break into your environment. Here, I've got the 9 or 10 right here. You really don't even have to look. But identify the ones that would maybe work. If there's 1 or 2 or 3 that wouldn't work against your environment at all, maybe you don't have any insider attack issues, let's say. Or maybe you don't have any third parties you rely upon. Well, remove those methods out there, but identify the initial exploitation methods that could be used to break into your environment, your devices, then rank them as the ones that are most likely to be used against you currently and in the near future, then implement mitigations against those top root exploitation methods. That's a 3. I've written books, white papers on this. I've got a book, A Data-Driven Computer Defense. I consider my magnum opus. It's 200 pages just to say what's said in those 3 Visio squares right there. It really is this simple. I could say it even in a sentence or so, saying you should fight first and best against the ways that are most likely to be used against you. And that is about as simple, stupid as anybody could ever say anything. You should fight the most likely threats. That literally is the definition of risk mitigation. Computer security defense is all about risk mitigation. The problem is that most computer defenses don't rank the risk appropriately. So this is what I'm telling you to do, is to rank the ways that anything can break into your device or your organization, and ransomware, and again, ransomware methods in this case, and then fight those methods, the most likely to be used against you methods first and best. Now, if you use a data-driven defense, instead of worrying about ransomware, instead of worried about, I don't know, keylogging Trojan, instead of being, worried about the outcomes of the problems, I say focus on the root causes that allowed that exploitation. And that's what you should do, is look at what are the most likely impactful exploit root causes, and then you want to put defenses against those root causes against the most likely threats. Again, focus first and best on the ways that are most likely to compromise you. That is what a data-driven defender's approach does. And if you didn't know this, for the entirety of computers, with very few exceptions, for 30, 40 years, the number 1 and number 2 methods for attacking people successfully is social engineering and unpatched software. There have been times when, boot viruses or USB keys or something kind of came in there and interrupted that a little bit. For the entirety, though, of computers, social engineering from the very beginning was used to compromise people, followed by people not patching their software. And let me say, social engineering and unpatched software go back and forth as the number 1 and the number 2, but together they've always been either number 1 or number 2. And social engineering's been like number 1 since like 2009. And maybe one day something will replace these. Maybe it'll be some cloud virus or something like that, or, I don't know, electrical magnetic interference attack or something. But right now, These are and have been for decades the most common ways that people get broken into, including by ransomware. And we even know before, a couple of years ago, a coworker of mine, Javed Malik, actually did a meta study, looked at 100 randomly selected cybersecurity reports that reported on the root causes of exploitation. And all 100 reports said social engineering was the #1 root cause of all hacking and malware. So you don't have to believe me. You can believe 100 unaffiliated vendors that were not working with KnowBe4 and see what they say. I rarely in my entire life have ever come across a cybersecurity study that didn't say that social engineering is the #1 cause of malicious threats. I've actually come across one report, and I'll show you that one report in just a minute, but almost all the others in the entirety for decades have said social engineering is the #1 problem, followed closely by unpatched software. When I did recently look at 6 ransomware reports, so I looked at over 100 ransomware cybersecurity reports, but only 6 out of all over 100, only 6 of them actually gave the exact percentages of the threats that were used. The initial root exploits gave percentages. They all said social engineering, unpatched software, and password issues, and RDP, and all this stuff could be used to break into you. But only 6 of those reports actually gave rankings or percentages. And out of the 6, 5 of the 6 said that social engineering was #1 by far. One, the Codeware report, in 1 or 2 quarters said that RDP, remote desktop protocol, and that could be, a lot of times that's where the attacker already has the password. They bought the password, a valid password from somebody, and they just log on in, or they do some type of password guessing attack. But outside of the Codeware report, every other report in my life has said that social engineering is the #1 cause, including 5 of the 6 ransomware reports. And even if you throw the Codeware report in there, out of all the attacks that you see listed there, social engineering is #1 by far, at least responsible for at least half of all attacks. And then unpatched software is another quarter. RDP, or remote server attack, and password guessing are somewhere in credential theft are kind of around a quarter. Maybe third-party reliances and another thing. The USB one seems to be kind of I can't believe that 7% of ransomware attacks on anybody's report had to do with USB key attacks, but certainly Sophos is, they must have seen instances where it was. But even like I say, credential theft, how do you think the credentials were stolen, right? They can be, they're usually stolen because of social engineering, although they could be stolen because someone compromises the password authentication database and that sort of stuff. But, by far, without a doubt, if you're worried about all hacker and malware attacks, you need to focus on social engineering and unpatched software. If you were looking at ransomware specifically, which is all right to do in today's world because that's what's going to hurt you a lot of times, it's still social engineering, although unpatched software is a little bit lower, maybe replaced by attacks using RDP or password guessing. But this is what we're going to use to form the basis of the recommendations of what you should do to protect yourself, is this particular data set right here. And based on that particular data set, here are the most important critical defenses you could have. And of course, because this is ransomware encrypting your data, you do need to have a good, thorough, complete system tested, offline, up-to-date, backup, and restore. If you're going to have a chance of defeating and not paying the ransom from ransomware, you got to have a good backup. Let me say, most people don't, or maybe they have a good backup, but it's not secure, and the bad guys get to the copies and they delete them, or they haven't tested them to see how long it's going to take to restore that. A lot of people have a really good backup, but then when they go to actually look for that, when they go to do the restore, when they've been hit by ransomware, it shows it's going to take 1,000 years to do the restores. So you want to make sure that you have a good, thorough, secure, complete system, tested, offline, so secure, up-to-date, backup, and restore. That's the bare base of trying. That's not really preventative. That's just for recovery, help you in recovery purposes. Most organizations do not have that, and because of that, a lot of them end up having to pay the ransom extortion. But in most cases of ransomware today, a backup alone is not going to gain you very much because they also do data exfiltration, and they steal credentials and other things. So you need to make sure that you prevent the ransomware from being successful in the first place. You need to stop. You need to concentrate on putting down the initial root causes of exploitation that allows the ransomware to get into your environment, and everything must be secondary to the prevention and also the backup, because if you don't prevent it and it's allowed to go off, there's a good chance you're going to end up paying the ransom or have a lot of downtime. Now, once you figure out what the top root causes are against your organization, most likely to be social engineering, unpatched software, and some password issues, you then want to take the best combination of policies and your technical defenses to be able to put it down. And you always also have to add security awareness training, because no matter how good your policies are, no matter how good your technical defenses are, there's always going to be some amount of maliciousness that gets by those two things. And so you want to make sure that you educate employees to be able to spot maliciousness and to handle it appropriately, which is to report it to IT security, help desk, whatever, or delete it. But you want to create the best defense in depth. That means layered policies, technical controls, and training to prevent bad things from happening against your environment, to have early warning and detection of things that get past your preventative controls, and then have incident response and good quick recovery to minimize damage for the things that have gotten into your environment. So again, you want to use the best combination of policies, technical controls, and training, and most companies are very weak in the training area to prevent, detect, and recover from hacker and malware attacks and ransomware attacks. So knowing that, for ransomware in particular, you want to focus on mitigating social engineering as the thing you do first and best. And again, that's because the vast majority of ransomware breaks in because of social engineering. You do want to patch your internet accessible software. Last year, there was 18,103 things, or 108 things. It was 18,000, over 18,000. Pieces of software and firmware you're told to patch, but only 2% of those things are ever used in the wild against anybody. So you only really need to patch the stuff that's actually being abused by hackers. And there's reports on the internet telling you which things are being used in the wild or not. But if you don't know, make sure you patch your operating systems, your browsers, your browser add-ins, Microsoft Office. Certainly, if you have Microsoft Office, your VPN software, anything that anytime you see a software firmware patching vulnerability that includes that it's being exploited in the wild, you need to patch it aggressively and 100%. And then the stuff that hackers never go after, it's up to you whether you want to patch it or not. But make sure you patch the stuff that's internet accessible, that's likely to be abused by hackers, first and best. Use multi-factor authentication where you can. You will not be able to use it everywhere, so then you want to use good, non-guessable, unique passwords. Where you can't use multi-factor authentication, make sure that every website and service has a different unguessable password. That way, if one of them gets compromised, one password can't be used against you to compromise more of your websites. Also, make sure that you enable account lockout policies in all your login portals and your application programming interfaces, if you have any of those, because that's where attackers are going to try to do password guessing. If you don't have account lockout enabled, there's a good chance, if given enough time, that attackers will be successful and take over your account. Also, teach yourself and end users and everyone how to spot rogue URLs. Most social engineering attacks include some type of rogue URL trick to try to trick people into think they're going to some trusted brand like Microsoft or Twitter or something like that. If you want to, I've got two links there. The first one is an article where I show the 12 most common rogue URL tricks, and the second link there is a 1-hour webinar where I give like 50 examples of the most common URL tricks used by attackers. Also, everyone wants to use least permissive permissions. That means don't be logged in as admin or root all the time, especially when you're picking up email or surfing the web, because that's just asking for trouble. And if you have file shares and things anywhere, you want to make sure they're least privileged, that the people that are accessing those things have the least permissions that are needed for them to perform their task. Remember, trying to prevent phishing social engineering is the best thing you can do. I have a webinar that talks about it's like 100 slides. Talks about every single thing that's in my brain that can tell you how to prevent phishing and social engineering attacks. If you don't like to watch 1-hour webinars of me talking, you can read my 49-page ebook. And again, it's everything that I and KnowBe4 can think of to prevent phishing. It's every policy, technical defense, and education best practice that I and KnowBe4 can think of to make your organization and people less likely to be phished. We even are big fans of this Give Red Flags training, social engineering red flags. This is a PDF. If you go to that link below, it's an article where you can download that PDF, or you can email me at rogerg@knowbefore.com and ask for my PDF posters. But here's one that talks about the 22 most common signs that somebody should understand that an email is a phishing email. Things like the from is a wrong address, or the from address and where you'd reply to are different, or the friendly name is different than the from address, or it arrives at strange time at night, or it contains a malicious file attachment, or has a rogue looking link. Again, this is a good PDF that you can download, print, and send and use with anybody. Even have kind of the 12 red flags of rogue URLs that come out of my article and talk that I just talked about. But these are the most common tricks that malware writers and phishers and spammers use to trick you into clicking on something that you shouldn't click. So you can go to that link at the bottom of your page, or you can email me again, roger@knowbefore.com. I'll send you those PDFs. And we even have lots of good resources just in particular to fight ransomware. We have a whole portal dedicated to ransomware. We have a ransomware hostage rescue manual guide that has most of I helped redo the 2020 edition, which still applies in 2021 and later. That talks about all the things you should be doing to prevent, detect, and recover from ransomware. We even have a really cool ransomware simulator we call Ransim. If you download this, it tries to simulate over a dozen commonware ransomware programs. It's not really ransomware, but it simulates them, and your antivirus and endpoint detection removal system should not allow these things to run, but you'll find out. Some people will tell me, I downloaded it and it didn't work because it allowed all 21 to run, and I have other people that go, hey, it blocked it. You can use our ransomware simulator to find out which programs your endpoint detection programs will detect and prevent. It's a really good quick test to find out how well protected you are. Most people find out that there's a lot of ransomware programs that wouldn't have been blocked. At KnowBefore, of course, we're big believers in that you should provide training to all of your employees, longer training when they're first hired, and then annually every year, maybe 15, 30, 45 minutes. Then every month they get some small training, maybe 1 to 3 minutes, and then you do simulated phishing tests every month to see how well they took the training. And when people fail the simulated phishing test, they get more training. That way, the people that need more training get more training. We know this works because our average customer that comes to us has about over 30% of their end users will click on a normal looking phishing email that you and I think we would never click on, but they do click on it. But after you do the training and simulated phishing and training where needed, you can get the average percentage of people that will click on a phishing email in your organization below 5%. This isn't our best customers. This is all of our customers that follow just what I said, which is to do annual and monthly training and simulated phishing and giving more training to people that fail the phishing. It really does work. There's no other thing you can do to prevent hacking and malware and ransomware attacks than to fight social engineering using security awareness training. Again, I'm Roger Grimes. You can email me. I'll respond to you within 24 hours. You can send me an email at rogerg@knowbefore.com, and you can follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter. And I appreciate you putting up with me in my fast 20-minute talk today. And good luck, and continue to fight the good fight.
Oh man, Roger, thank you so much. That talk, as always, was absolutely information packed. I did see, not only did we see a bunch of questions coming in, wow, you guys are all just had your coffee, fired up, ready to get into it today, and I absolutely love that. But I also got a lot of asks for various different links that, Roger, you had included in your slides. Now, one of the things I want to remind all of you is that we are going to send out the recording after we wrap, so you will have a chance to go back through and rewatch this presentation from Roger. I highly recommend that. I highly recommend that you rewatch all of our presentations because they're going to go by very quickly today, and there's going to be a lot of great insight and information, and you're going to want to go back and rewatch and reabsorb a little bit later on. So make sure that you stay tuned for that. Now, another great way to make sure you get the information that you want from KnowBefore is to click on that wish list up on your screen right now. What would be helpful for you? What would be a great follow-up, a great way to dig in a little bit further to everything we just heard from Roger? And the last thing I want to let you know before we get into handouts and prizes here is that I know that with Roger, there's always so much information to cover, and Roger, thank you for that. So we don't often get to have a lot of time for Q&A. We've got lots of Q&A sessions coming up ahead of us, so stay tuned for those. But also just know that anytime that we can't get to your question, we are getting all of those questions to the team. So there will be answers back coming from Roger, from the KnowBe4 team. You will hear back and make sure that you do get those answers. That is very important. So keep those questions coming in. All right, now handouts. If you haven't already visited the handouts tab, that report, that the test that Roger was talking about right at the end of his session there, that ransom download. So you can test out how vulnerable your network is against ransomware and crypto mining attacks. This is such an important step if you are either totally rebuilding, starting from scratch, or maybe just revising your ransomware strategy. It has to start with that awareness, right? So click into that handouts tab, grab that KnowBe4 link, and make sure you've got that ransom page opened. You can sign up for it after we wrap the MegaCast today, but just save that tab for now because you're going to want to come back to that later. All right, now I also said prizes. I know you heard that, and I know that registered and enjoyed and triggered for a few of you. So we're going to get into 2 prize giveaways. I'm going to do a $300 Amazon gift card and then the first of our Microsoft Surface Pro 9s. Now, I do want to remind you all that you do need to be here live and present at the MegaCast in order to win and meet all those T's and C's again in the handouts tab for you. Our very first lucky winner here with us today of a $300 Amazon gift card. That $300 Amazon gift card going to Greg Butler of Massachusetts. Greg Butler of Massachusetts. Congratulations. Now, Microsoft Surface Pro 9 going to Joshua Griffith from Iowa. Joshua Griffith from Iowa. Congratulations to Greg and to Joshua. Now, I will read all the prize winners out when we get to the end of the day, and we've got lots more prizes ahead of us here. Oh, I see some nice high fives coming in from the audience, and I love that. I love when you guys all cheer for each other. That's awesome. What a great crew we have here with us today. Well, speaking of great crews, we're going to keep things rolling because we have quite the crew here in front of us. Dun, 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 dun. I am very excited to introduce you all to our next expert presenter today on the MegaCast, and this is definitely a treat. We get to chat with the Synology crew. Here with us next is Ed Spinu, Technical Account Manager at Synology. Ed, thank you so much for being here with us today. I know you've got some awesome content lined up for us, and we definitely want to leave some time for Q&A at the end, so let's get things rolling. Ed, take it away.
Hey everyone, I want to thank everyone for joining today. My name is Ed, and I'm a Technical Account Manager here with Synology. Today I'll be discussing several best practices for prevention, mitigation, and recovery of ransomware. The discussion will be centered around one of our core applications for mitigating ransomware, namely Active Backup for Business. Ransomware attacks have cost organizations $8 trillion in 2023 alone, and are forecasted to cost a combined US $10 trillion in 2024. The average ransomware attack costs an organization nearly $4.5 million. That said, data protection plans with fast restoration options are crucial for mitigating the impact of ransomware and other forms of cybercrime. Backups are a crucial line of defense when disaster strikes. When data is lost following malicious deletion or modification, backups allow you to restore mission-critical data and avoid costly downtime. By leveraging Synology's Active Backup for Business solution, you're able to design a disaster prevention and backup strategy for your entire IT infrastructure. When ransomware strikes, a variety of different host devices, including employee computers, virtual machines, and servers, can all be compromised and locked by ransomware. Thankfully, Active Backup for Business provides a means of centralized protection against ransomware for your fleets of workstations, servers, virtual machines, and even your cloud applications, all in one convenient pane of glass and application. For physical workloads, you are easily able to protect all of your endpoints in the event of a malicious attack with a comprehensive bare metal backup and flexible file recovery. Similarly, you also have the option to back up your virtual infrastructure, including your vSphere and Hyper-V VMs, while also taking advantage of power data reduction technology through deduplication. Now, let's imagine a scenario where our employees' computers were compromised by ransomware, and let's zone in on some of the restoration options available to us. So, regarding the restoration options available for both your physical and virtual environments, whether your employees want to restore a full device or volume, or just a single file or folder, Synology has you covered. Alternatively, we also have a unique feature that I'll cover a bit later on today, allowing us to restore our physical environments as virtual machines and later spin those up via Virtual Machine Manager. As we saw in our last slide, our employees' workstations were just locked and compromised by ransomware, and crucial files need to be accessed immediately, Let's see what options are available to us. So Active Backup for Business provides your organization and its employees with that flexible file restoration options for both those physical and virtual environments. In the case of a ransomware attack, allowing them to restore an entire device or volume if needed, or alternatively, just a single file or folder. Additionally, files are able to be restored directly to the target destination or even exported locally to any current device or workstation your employees are working from. So now let's explore what that actual restoration process looks like via the self-service recovery portal. So the self-service recovery portal within Active Backup for Business allows for a seamless experience for restoring your files. As previously mentioned, you are able to browse the contents of your devices from a file level approach and either restore specific files and folders directly to that target device or virtual instance that have been backed up, or alternatively, you have the option to locally export and download any individual file or folder encompassing your backup directly on the workstation you are accessing that recovery portal with. Let's dive into a short demonstration of navigating and recovering files via the self-service recovery portal. Just to briefly start off, this is a Synology DSM. This is just the OS that our system essentially runs on, and the interface you're going to become very familiar with if you do have the Synology. So the first step, obviously, to restoring a file via that self-service recovery portal is first you need to create a task via Active Backup for Business. I'm going to cover a little bit more of the intricacies of some of these menus, but just for today's purpose, you can see there's an overview pane. You can see the protected devices, and you have tabs for creating those tasks for each of those devices here on the left. As far as the restoration options, you are able to restore the entire device all at once directly to that target destination. And I'll even cover another cool feature of recovering, those physical environments to a virtual machine. But for today's purpose, once you do create that task and specify your backup policy, you're actually able to use something called the self-service recovery portal, which is when you download Active Backup for Business in the package center, there's actually two sort of applications downloaded in tandem. First, there's the Active Backup for Business application, which you just saw is the one where you actually go ahead, create the specific task that you're trying to create and set your backup policy and retention schedule. And then there's the Active Backup for Business recovery portal. So this is the self-service recovery portal that allows you to essentially customize those restoration options. Let's say your employees' devices are compromised and you don't necessarily need to restore the entire device all at once, and you need to access a file quickly and download it to the current workstation you're working with. Well, in that case, you can see right here, I'm able to open the self-service recovery portal and then filter by obviously the role that I am. So obviously it's pulling in me, so Edward Spanu, eSpanu, but this could be also filtered, and you can grant restoration privileges based to anyone in your organization and specify who has access to what and who is able to actually restore any given file. And then I'm also able to filter by the specific task. So I can have VM tasks, physical server tasks, even also PC and workstation tasks, and I'm able to really dial into that and filter A by task and B by user. So let's go ahead and look at one of these tasks and kind of see what it looks like as far as restoring from a file level. Obviously, this is just the contents of a physical workstation or workload that we have. And let's say I want to go here and check one of the users. Go here and yep. So you can see I'm able to really explore. And let's say we want to go to the desktop, and we have a crucial file that we really want to restore, and let's say it's one of these right here. So we'll go here, and there's this PDF file. Let's say we want to restore this one. I'm actually able to specify the restoration option here. If I click restore, it's going to map that restore path on that physical workstation or workload, and we'll be able to restore it directly to that target device. This is very awesome if you want to restore directly to that target device. But let's say we don't have time, or we don't necessarily we want to access something before that workstation that's compromised by ransomware is actually fully up and running. We could also just say this is a crucial file, crucial document. We're able to just download it directly right here. Click the download option. It's going to pop up here in our in our browser, and we'll be able to see the file that we just downloaded and restore accordingly. Another unique feature is obviously restoring from a file level or a folder structure is very important, But based on what you specified in that backup policy and your retention policy, you can even filter through those various days of your backup. So let's say, there's older versions of those files and you want to go back to, a specific day or time frame, or you had a file and before that file was, let's say, locked by ransomware. So you're able to use a little calendar right here and filter by those specific days. Obviously, this is all going to be based on the retention policy that you set within that task creation process, which is within that active backup for business application. Once you set up that task, you can navigate to the recovery portal, filter by that task that you created, filter by the user role, and then also filter by the day and restore files directly to that target destination or download them directly to your physical workstation. So in the scenario we had, if an employee has files or has their entire workstation or device locked by ransomware and they need to access a crucial file, you can navigate to the recovery portal, filter by the day, filter by the role, and recover that file seamlessly. So to briefly recap, we saw what it looks like to use that self-service recovery portal in order to quickly navigate and access those individual files that were compromised within that workstation that was compromised and recover from either a file level or from the entire device. Now let's kind of look at another scenario. So obviously we saw how Active Backup for Business can restore and recover that data that's locked by ransomware for those employee workstations, the physical workstations. This is awesome is that we can use that portal to explore and download files from a file level from a variety of different endpoints. But now let's imagine something different happens. Let's say we have a physical server environment, not an employee workstation, but we have a crucial physical server environment that was, there's crucial data, the Office domain is hosted on it, and you need to get that physical server environment back up fast. Theoretically, you could use that recovery portal in order to access those files and recover them from a file level approach or from the entire device or volume. But let's say you don't have that, you don't have the time and you need to access that environment instantly, and you don't have time to see kind of what's wrong with the physical server, if the entire machine is compromised, and you want to actually go ahead and restore and bring that environment back up online. So what's cool is there's another feature called the Restore as VM feature that allows you within Active Backup for Business to take that backup that was housed for that physical environment, for that physical server, and actually restore it as a VM and spin it up via Synology's virtual machine manager using the compute and the resources of the NAS. So as reference, that image of the compromised physical server, it can then be mounted on VMware, Hyper-V, or Synology Virtual Machine Manager, allowing you to resume work as quickly as possible. So let's dive a little bit deeper into restoring that physical server as a virtual machine, utilizing Active Backup for Business and Synology's Virtual Machine Manager. So Virtual Machine Manager provides an all-in-one solution to run those VMs directly on your Synology NAS using its resources. It's compatible with various Windows and Linux operating systems and provides integrated recovery options directly through Active Backup for Business. Now, let's kind of, again, explore kind of what we were talking about. You have a physical server that's, that we want to actually spin up as a VM and utilize that, Active Backup for Business in conjunction with Virtual Machine Manager. You're able to take that server backup image and that was once backed up to that Synology NAS and then import it to Synology Virtual Machine Manager and then spin that up directly on the NAS and recover that server as a virtual machine. So let's kind of dive into what that process looks like on the Synology NAS and explore a live demonstration of what that recovery looks like of that Windows server and recovering it as a virtual machine within Virtual Machine Manager. So we're back in DSM. We have Active Backup for Business pulled up, and like the scenario kind of talked about, we have an Office domain that's hosted on a physical server, and we want to get that back up and running and restore it as a virtual machine. Like referenced again, we have the different tasks that were created, within Active Backup for Business for all those environments. And let's say the Office domain is hosted right here. We can go ahead and look at this task right here, and we can see kind of those restoration options and the various different restore points that were specified in the task creation wizard. So these restore points are going to be based on that retention policy as well as the backup schedule that you go ahead and select when you first create that task. Let's say we're just going to pick the most recent one. And here's where you have the, the various options. So like I mentioned, you're able to restore either directly to that device itself, or we have the option to, restore that physical environment as a virtual machine, either to, VMware vSphere, Microsoft Hyper-V, or we can instant restore to Synology's virtual machine manager. So let's say we can go ahead and we're gonna go with the option as far as restoring it directly to Synology's virtual machine manager. We'll click that. Specify the storage volume on the NAS. And then we'll go ahead and set a name for that virtual machine. So we'll go ahead and call it DL8012. And then we're assigning the vCPUs as well as the VRAM for that virtual machine. Storage for the virtual disk. Network settings. And here, if we actually have an ISO file, so we want to have a specific version of, Windows 10 or Ubuntu for Linux that we actually want to go ahead and mount on that physical server. So when we go spin it up, we're able to, have that version that we'd like. We also have the option as far as having a, virtual USB controller, a virtual keyboard, specifying the firmware, etc. But we'll just leave it right here. We'll just set it to unmounted for now, but it should be good. And then here's where we actually can assign who has power management permissions for that specific virtual machine, which is taking that backup image of that physical server and obviously virtualizing it. So we can go ahead and filter by domain users or local users on the NAS as far as who was able to power on that virtual machine that that was hosting that office environment. Once all those settings are kind of set, we'll go ahead and press done, and it'll ask us if we want to power the virtual machine on after creation. So go ahead and press done. It actually, once you press done within Active Backup for Business, it instantly sort of prompts you to, it instantly is prompted to open Virtual Machine Manager. So as you can see right here, it's actually importing that physical server, that office domain into Virtual Machine Manager. I actually, just in the sake of time, because obviously it's importing, it takes a few minutes, but I actually previously created a task for that same exact office environment, and you can see it's running. I don't actually have the network connection, everything set up yet, but you're able to easily configure that. And then once you go ahead and have that imported in Virtual Machine Manager and you assign all those resources, it's using the compute and the resources of the NAS and the virtual CPUs and the VRAM that you specified, we're actually able to, once we power it on, we can connect to it. So let's say we want to go ahead and connect to it. You can see I'm back into the environment. I can access, if we had a virtual keyboard, we could use that as well. But I'm back in here. I could access the crucial files that we need and essentially resume operations of that office domain directly on the NAS itself. So depending on the amount of vCPUs and VRAM that you specify, though, it's going to be, as it's going to be more, if you assign more resources to that sort of instance within Virtual Machine Manager, it's going to perform better. But this is just a brief explanation example of how you're able to virtualize a backup of a physical environment and get your environment back up and running in the case of a ransomware attack. So to briefly recap, we saw how easy it is to take a physical Windows server environment like the one hosting our office domain and actually restore it as a virtual machine utilizing Active Backup for Business as well as Synology's Virtual Machine Manager. Today we saw exactly how you're able to use Active Backup for Business to provide an all-in-one centralized protection against ransomware for your organization. Our solution allows you to easily consolidate and manage those backups from your fleet of workstations, your physical servers, or even your virtual machines. The flexible restoration options allow you to easily access and recover your data so you can minimize downtime for your critical production systems by rapidly restoring from those backups that are hosted on a local or offsite Synology system. The flexible recovery options that we saw as far as restoring the entire volume itself, restoring from just a single file or folder structure that we're interested in and looking at, or even restoring as a virtual machine and running that system and spinning it up via Virtual Machine Manager really allows you to customize your protection plan against ransomware. Lastly, I wanted to take some time to highlight the diversity and flexibility of our line of units. From terabytes to petabytes, we have a variety of unit options in our hardware fleet that can tailor to your organization's needs. From compact disk station units, to standard rack units, to all flash arrays that are centered around optimal input and output performance, and even to our high-density storage solutions consisting of 60 drive bays, there is a Synology solution that is right for you. Scaling has never been easier as all of our units work seamlessly in tandem with each other. Also, each unit runs Synology's proprietary OS that you saw today, known as DSM, allowing for an intuitive user experience that remains consistent throughout all of our product line. And thank you for attending the webinar today. It's been great showing you how to leverage Synology's Active Backup for Business in order to create a customized protection plan in order to prevent ransomware. If you'd like to see a more in-depth demo of anything we discussed today, whether it's Active Backup for Business, Virtual Machine Manager, or how those work in conjunction with each other, I'd be more than happy to do so. I'll be providing a Calendly link to anyone interested, and we'll be able to definitely go over those topics in more detailed at you guys' request. Thank you again for everyone. My name is Ed, and it's been awesome talking today.
Awesome, Ed. Thank you so much for that incredible presentation and demo. It is always so exciting to kind of get into the solution a little bit and really see things in action. Before we get into our questions, I do want to point out to everyone there that we have a poll. Again, think of this as your wish list, because Ed just gave us a lot of great info and we're about to get into our Q&A here. And there's so much information coming your way. There's just not going to be a full 100% retention, right? Maybe one or two of you have that eidetic memory. I certainly don't. So this is how you can click that easy button for yourself. You're going to click on the wish list on your screen right now and let Synology know how they can follow up with you. While you're doing that, Ed, very quickly, because we've got a lot of questions to get to, I have one first important question to you. It is the hot topic of our day: DC or Marvel? What do you think?
For me personally, it has to be Marvel. I'm a big Spider-Man fan, so that's where I lean. But to each their own. DC makes some great great characters too. So
you know what, Ed? I think you're actually very much in the middle of our zeitgeist here in the conversation, because Spider-Man has been a tipping point for a lot of people. Spider-Man has come up a lot. And you're getting a lot of shout outs and agreements in Marvel. All right, well, we'll let that rage for a little bit and we'll get into some questions about Synology and your superheroes and your superpowers. Ed, I want to start out with, we got a few questions around limitations and if there's anything that Synology would need to be aware of, especially when we're talking about virtual machines. So is there a limit to how many virtual machines you can back up?
Yeah, so the answer to that is not from the Active Backup for Business level. There's like a practical limit to that number. Generally, concurrently, that would be around 50, but that isn't something that's put in place from Active Backup for Business or Synology, but that's just more of a general guideline.
Okay, perfect. Wondering here if we can search for specific data on a certain date. How specific can they get with the searches and reporting there?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was demoing the recovery portal, you can really dig into based on your retention policy and your backup. So the backups themselves can be run hourly. So you could filter by a date or even a specific hour if you'd like, and easily recover data from X point in time.
Okay. Are Synology's on-prem offerings going to help organizations improve RTO and RPO metrics, especially after ransomware infection or attempted infection?
Sure. As far as to that, I mean, if it's referring to the on-prem offerings as the actual NAS themselves, then, absolutely. That's kind of the whole thesis of, kind of using Active Backup for Business and using Synology in order to have a good policy put in place when ransomware does attack. But if they're referring as far as the on-premise, as far as on-site support in that respect, we do have a 24/7 free support line, but we don't actually have on-site support. But if there is a need for on-site support, there could be a network consultant via, we actually have a partner network. So if that's something that's that someone wishes to have then that can definitely be arranged.
I love that. That's a great answer. Lots of options available. Okay, what methods are going to be available to back up a PC server, and then how would we go about restoring? And also wondering, they got follow-up questions. This is a nesting doll. There's questions and questions here. Are they able to keep any version?
As far as Any version of the backups? Yeah. So that's actually going to be specified when you first create the task. Through Active Backup for Business, you actually set a retention policy for when you want those backups to essentially how long you want them to be retained. You can set that to theoretically, you can have that indefinitely run as far back. Obviously, the backups themselves are incremental, but keep in mind it is good to make sure you are aware of what that retention policy is.
Sure, absolutely. And is there a lot of customization option there? And then how easy is that for people to set up? We do have a few people that chimed in and said, hey, I've got a smaller team. Is this going to be a big lift to implement?
No, this is it's actually between. I would say that the wizards and kind of what I kind of shown briefly in the presentation as well are pretty straightforward to in order to work through, and just our knowledge base and what we offer from our perspective from Synology can and easy. Even if you have a smaller team, it's pretty straightforward and easy to work through. And then I would also lean on. There's a lot of resources also on YouTube and the Reddit community as well, if that's something they want to leverage. But our knowledge base on our website kind of explains the whole process and should guide you along, implementing that.
It's awesome. In fact, we just got a shout out from a client of yours. Andy says, we have one of the smaller Synology NAS and I love it. Does many server functions that would cost many times the price to implement with standard servers. So there you go. That's your community right there, folks. Yep. I love that. Well, okay, Ed, we're getting close to the end of time here. I'm going to sneak in just one or two more questions before we let you go. We talked about a lot of, and you showcased a lot of really cool functionalities for us today. If you had to pick one thing that really makes Synology stand out, what would that be?
Yeah, and honestly, to the kind of what to kind of harp back on what was just stated. What's great about Synology is the functionality of Active Backup for Business. Once you purchase the NAS unit and obviously the accompanying drives, the software itself is license free. So the ability to, obviously there's other solutions that to do the same thing as what, can be done with the Synology. You have to pay, annual recurring subscription fees and in order to get the same thing that you'd be able to get, with Synology and Active Backup for Business. So you could really use the NAS for a host of different things, whether you want to use it to, back up your workstations, your servers, your VMs, or you want to use it, to, pull in, camera data or whatever it is. So there's so many use cases, and just the integrated software that we have with Synology is really cool. So definitely advise everyone to check that out.
Awesome. All right, Ed, I wish we could keep going with this. And certainly you've got a lot of fans out there, and not just because of the Marvel Universe, also because of your wonderful answers and information. Before we let you go, though, for anyone out there that is really excited, wants to jump in with Synology, wants to learn more, I know you mentioned that you're available to continue that conversation. What is the first step?
Yeah. And, if you want to get in contact with me, I mean, I have a, Calendly, I have a booking, and I'd be more than happy to, take a call, answer some questions. And then also there's a lot of other Eds out there, maybe not Eds, but other technical account managers. So based on kind of your region, and we can make sure that someone, absolutely, whatever, whether it's just a demo or you want to learn a little bit more, whatever it is, we're more than happy to talk.
There's no other Eds, but there might be other Eds. I like it. All right. Well, Ed, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being here with us today and giving us so much wonderful information.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, and to all of you out there who are clicking on that wish list, keep that up. I'm also going to suggest that you head on over to the Handouts tab. Make sure that you're visiting that Handouts tab throughout the day today, because there are lots of great resources and follow-ups that you want to continue on this conversation with. In fact, Synology has actually provided the slide deck that Ed was just kind of walking us through before we got into the demo there. There's a great slide deck there that is a wonderful way to revisit this information, as well as to share with your team members. So if you have folks that you'd like to bring some of this insight to afterwards, make sure you've got that slide deck downloaded. You can go through that after we wrap here. All right, now we are going to give away a prize giveaway. We have a $300 Amazon gift card and a Microsoft Surface Pro 9 coming your way. So the $300 Amazon gift card is going to Ron Breyer from California, and the Microsoft Surface Pro 9 is going to Matthew Krubisky from Connecticut. Krubsky, sorry, Matthew, I mispronounced pronounced that horribly. Matthew Krubsky from Connecticut. All right, so to Ron Breyer getting a $300 Amazon gift card and Matthew Krubsky getting a Microsoft Surface Pro 9, congratulations. We're going to follow up with you after we wrap. Don't forget, my friends, lots more chances to win. Plus, we have that best question gift card coming at you from each session. So the prizes are rolling. So stay tuned for that. I do also want to quickly mention here, there's a little bit of a bug in the platform. So a few of our answers that we're sending back in the live chat are not coming back to you. We are seeing all of the questions that you are sending in. We can see them, they are coming in, but some of our answers are not saving. So if you have sent a message in and we have not responded to you, we still are your friends. We're still here with you. We are not ignoring you. We love all your questions and we care about you all. Please know that that is not a purposeful cold shoulder. We are working on it. And we will get you some answers. If any questions are not getting answered, as always, we will make sure that the full questions list gets sent to our teams after we wrap. So you are going to get responses back from everybody who's here today. You will get those answers. We're going to get this fixed very quickly here, but I just want to make sure you all know that we haven't all of a sudden disappeared off the face of the earth here. This is not a Thanos situation. We have not been blipped. We are here with you, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. All right, well, let's keep things moving. Speaking of blips, we're going to blip on over to our next presentation. It is time to get into our next session of the day. Now, as you can see, we have a treat in store because we get to chat with the Veeam team. Now, if that doesn't sound like a superhero crew, I don't know what does. Of course, I guess to be a real superhero, we'd have to get more alliterative. The Veeam, the Vam. Vamoosing Veeams? I don't know. I'm going to work on that. You guys help me out with it. Anyways, we've got the wonderful Veeam team here with us up next on our MegaCast. I'm so excited to introduce you all to Aaron Murphy, Field CTO, Americas at Veeam. Aaron, thank you so much for being here with us today at the MegaCast. I know that you have a lot of info in store for us. Again, we're going to stop for some Q&A at the end, so we are going to hand things on over to you. Take it away, Aaron.
Hi, my name's Aaron Murphy. I'm a Field CTO here in the Americas at Veeam. We're going to give you an update on ransomware and the current best practices for prevention, mitigation, and recovery. I've got kind of three sections here. I've got some primary research that we conduct, and I've got some understanding cyber attack section, and then a section on some best practices and recommendations and capabilities that can help you with prevention, mitigation, and recovery. So let's get into the research. Now, what is it? This is independent research. It's unbiased IT leaders. That means it's not just our products, it's all products in terms of backup and recovery and different infrastructures throughout the world. And you can see that short link on the left. You go there are options to bring down the overall summary, but also segregated by country and by industry. So it can be really helpful to you in your organization to look at some issues that other organizations are having, evaluate yourselves, and then use that to kind of sponsor a program of change and improvement. So let's look at the first data point, and we've been asking this for a few years. And again, cyber comes in as the most impactful down issue in an organization that causes an outage. And we know why. It's the only one where there's potentially a large amount of data, 30%, 40%, or higher, probably I think it's about 50% on average, data that's impacted by a full-blown ransomware attack, which means you've got more to recover, and you've also got to clean and make sure that recovery is clean of any malwares, hooks, or backdoors that the attacker used to get into the environment. So, there's a longer recovery process, and we're going to go through that later. How many people said they were attacked in 2023? Well, it's 75%, and that's down from 85% the year before, so that's goodness. But still, we're in a situation where more organizations were hit quarterly than believe they were not hit at all, and 60% were hit more than once. That's come down from 66%, so that's goodness, but we can see it's still a big issue. Now, when you have been hit, imagining that you can recover your environment, you've got good copies of your backups, which a lot more people have these days, you still have to recover in a timely manner. So where are we with that? 2 of 5 servers in organizations could not be recovered in a timely manner, and only 32% of organizations can recover a 50 server site within a business week. So there's a lot of work to be done here, and I think the more organizations look into automation and orchestration, they can improve on that and make it better for their organization and reduce the impact. Where are people recovering from? 85%, and this has been growing year on year, expect to recover some of their DR from cloud copies of their data. But is it tested? Have you automated it? Can you build that environment as quickly as possible? If you haven't, then you probably add in a few days into the recovery to build that environment in the cloud to recover to that you didn't need to. So, that's an important lesson and things that we can improve upon. Did you orchestrate? Well, we can see that nearly 50%, 49% do it manually. 39% has some scripts, maybe some infrastructure as code they've built themselves. 13% use orchestrated workflows from a product designed to do that kind of thing. And we recommend that as another area of improvement. Now, if we asked organizations if they were going to change and look for something that's modern, what are some of the things they're looking for? And here's the top things, right? They want it integrated with cyber. They want the infrastructure tools and the cyber tools to pass information, to be able to react to things they find, to be fully integrated with the cyber defense and also cyber recovery processes. So we're going to talk about that. They need mobility across clouds. When you're in a situation where you've been attacked, there's a good chance you might want to recover to an environment you've never recovered to before. So if your backup software allows you to recover from what might have started as, say, VMware or Hyper-V, and you want to be able to recover it into compute nodes in Azure or AWS or Google, that's a goodness. Well, not all environments allow you to do that, but organizations are looking for that. They're looking for that in general use too. The ability to move is for technical reasons or commercial reasons, is a good thing for an organization. And many people looking for that flexibility, and they want manageability. As things have become fragmented, people have used cloud natives in the different hyperscalers. They've used, built-in tools as well as enterprise tools like ours in the data center. They've suddenly realized it's hard to get the observability. It's hard to get the coordination and get the same level of service and service level attainment in each environment. So looking for one tool to cover it all. So let's go on to understanding cyber attacks. And we're going to go into this in a little detail because it explains quite a lot about what you should be looking at in terms of defense, mitigation, and recovery. First, we're going to look at an attack. So we've built a timeline here. We've built it on a year. It could be less, probably going to be longer, to look at the different phases of the attack and where the opportunities are to solve this as early as possible. We know the first phase is reconnaissance, understanding the organization, trying to figure out how to breach, how to get a login, and it's often a dedicated organization that prepares this initial breach. And the later stage attackers is usually a different organization that they've bought the access, and if they get paid a ransom, they pay a cut of that to the people who make the original breach. We've seen it with phishing. We've seen it with using LinkedIn and calling employees and impersonating their IT department. They get very clever at getting in there. Once they're in, as a user, authenticated, the main process here is not to do anything rash, not to be discovered, but they're starting to build a base of operations, make it redundant, so they've got multiple ways into the environment should one of them get shut off. This is some of the earliest areas, the sneak in and the base of operations where you could actually detect it with your security tools and with some backup tools, depending on what capabilities they have. But it's important that every product that manages your infrastructure is built to kind of defend against this phase, the lateral movement and elevate access. They're trying to discover what's going on in the environment. What are the key servers? Am I on, what kind of environment am I on VMware? Who's the, what accounts are important? What other systems are there? How can I discover more information? How can I get elevated access? This is, you can defend against this, and it's important that all products you buy and implement can be installed in such a way as to defend you from this phase. And that could be a point actually where they exfiltrate data. So that's the first point where they could demand a ransom. But progressing on, this is where they start to kind of prepare for the full-blown attack, denying you access to your data and your ability to recover. They want to cripple recovery. They want to destroy backups. You want to make sure that that's not possible. They want to log into systems and disable tools, maybe change backup policies to make sure to get things to expire. You've got to be able to defend against that with how you implement and policy enforce your entire environment. And then finally, the late stages of the attack. Now, as you can see here, building across this whole timeline, the little cogs describe malware tools and backdoors and configurations that are in there that could be indicators of compromise that you're possible to find. You know, sometimes they hijack DLLs and they implement batch files. Now, you don't want to go scanning for batch files, but the batch files, if they're placed in an area that you should have no good reason to have those kind of files there, then you could scan for them and find them there, and that could be a good indicator of compromise. Or security tools can find more advanced things, such as, you know, a Windows event log registers a successful logging for RDP, but why is it coming from 127.0.0.1? Is that someone established a permanent backdoor into the environment? It should be showing you the source IP address. You know, that could be another indicator of compromise. What you should be looking for is ways of using that information from security tools to make sure the backup environment is aware of what's going on and can take action such as start to back it. So imagine that's at this stage here, base of operations, we can immediately take a copy of the data from a snapshot, and then we've got the best copy of data before later stages of the attack, and the IT and security teams can go in and put in defensive mechanisms. You've got backups across all this, right? So it's over this timeline, it's great if your backup tool like ours can go back in time and automatically find you the last good backup that's clean of any malware tools. But you don't want to go back that far. You might want to start there and then roll forward, only selecting good data and bringing the system up to date. Now, if you do have a full-blown attack, this is a kind of outline of the recovery process. Now, a company like ours, with the number of customers we have, at 400,000, we've got a lot of experience. We've got hundreds of successful recoveries of helping customers with our SWAT team on cyber recovery. That means we learn a lot about the process. We learn a lot about what help people need. We can advise people on what to do to defend. And we know what to build into the products to speed up that recovery. You know, you have the attack, you activate your incident response plan, you bring in your specialist teams, law enforcement perhaps, a dedicated cyber response team, maybe from your cyber insurer. You have to recover to a clean environment, maybe keeping some of your original equipment back for forensic analysis. So you want to do that in parallel. That means that's probably why a lot of organizations are looking to use the cloud. It's instant access to infrastructure rather than trying to buy additional infrastructure for this process. And you have to be able to recover things instantly into a secure sandbox on an isolated network, so your security teams can get to work to clean those restores and make sure that the data going back is good. Now, if you can automate that whole workflow, receive configurations from a security team and automate that in the backup, well, that's goodness, right? That's going to speed up the whole process. So here's some recommendations from us. Zero trust, it's a concept and it's a framework. It's not a product, and I'm sure you all know that, right? But what we start with is assume there's going to be a breach, and your job is really to minimize the attack surface and contain it. And the ways to do that is to verify explicitly. Every access has to be controlled with user access, like MFA, and it has to be continually controlled. Maybe you have one-time passwords for making a configuration change, but you don't have that permanently. And use least privilege access for every user, device, and application in your environment. So this is broader than just our tool set. But when it comes to making your data resilient, you can extend this principle. zero trust principle best applied to backup and recovery is that the backup software and the backup storage are not all in one, and they do not have implicit trust. You don't want someone to be able to access your backup software and make changes, so you have to have ways to defend against that. But if they do get access, what you don't want is them to have access to your first backup copy or your second backup copy. You want to distribute that and make it more resilient and reduce the trust between those components. Have multiple resilience zones and have the data off-site, and have all of your data immutable to protect from any sort of modification or deletion. And how does that look in reality? Well, here it is. Multiple resilience zones in this architecture, but every one, you have to build it with the concept of assume breach. Assume they can get into production. Assume they can get into backup. But have things implemented in all of those that curtail the attack, minimize it. If you backup targets, like dedicated backup devices, are from a different vendor than the backup tool, and have a different set of credentials, and have things like immutability that's entirely managed separately, it cannot be turned off, and you have it in maybe two locations, so here we have a device maybe in your data center, and here we have the public cloud, then all of a sudden you've got multiple resilience zones. So even if, say, they took out the backup environment, I can quickly implement another one because I've taken a configuration backup and put that offsite and access my backups and get into recovery scenarios. This is what we recommend, multiple resilient architectures, and really think twice about an all-in-one solution, because if it's breached, then you may be in more trouble, and you've increased your risk. So I've got about 4 slides now about our data platform and some of the things we've put in. We think you should be looking for some of these capabilities in an environment. Remember the top 3 things that people wanted. They want it integrated with cyber. They wanted it to be manageable. These are the kind of things that organizations are looking for. And, the mobility across clouds. Well, we have that. We manage things that are virtual, physical, across all the hyperscalers, cloud native in Kubernetes, SaaS applications like 365. All those are part of the attack surface, and we can protect that data. But monitoring analytics is important. Can the monitoring and analytics discover things that might help you solve the problem early on in the attack? Can the monitoring and analytics do policy enforcement to make sure you're not introducing configurations into your environment that are insecure, like you've turned on RDP on part of the backup infrastructure? Can it alert that, stop you doing that? Can it make sure that you're meeting your RPOs, that the backups are recent enough? Can it do recovery orchestration and also continuous recovery testing, full recovery testing, that the application comes back online, and give you that confidence that when you do have an issue, you can recover? Does it make sure that you have the right number of copies of data, the 3-to-1 rule, and all of those copies are immutable? This is critically important. So let's look at a few things, 3 more slides of things that we've implemented that we think are going to help you in prevention, mitigation, and recovery. It's great to have everything immutable and have it in the data center and offsite, but you also want to make the backup environment even more hardened, right? One thing we have is the 4-eyes admin protection. So even if it was a internal attack, or they breached a backup admin account, and it's going to be very difficult to do that. We've got MFA, we recommend separating it from admin domains and all those kind of good recommendations. But any changes like data deletion, changing policies, adding users is going to need multiple sign-offs from multiple administrators. And when something like that does happen, like new accounts being created, we can also create an alert, right? And send it to someone who cares about that, because that could be a good signal of something going on in your environment you don't want. Have continual monitoring of the security configuration, not just of the backup software, but the environment, the network. Do you have the right levels of TLS? Have you opened up RDP? Have that to prevent configuration drift. And if it does happen, alert and make sure someone addresses it. and have all the information you need in one centralized dashboard. We've got a centralized dashboard that gives you full observability. Are my backups up to date? Are they immutable? Are they offsite? Are there any indicators of malware, either from the backup software or from our endpoint detection tools? And have it all rolled up into a single dashboard to give you a confidence score. It's critical because backups are touching everything, that they can also help with detection. We have 4 methods built into our technology that help you in all those phases of the cyber attack and also the cyber recovery. An AI-built malware detection engine that does entropy analysis and also does file extensions analysis that can be quick and easy to detect immediately during the backup that something's going on in that environment. And that's critical, that it's light and it's quick. Speed is of the essence here. Any anomalies and enforcement alerts, new users were created, failed MFA logins with suspect malware, can be instantly reported into ServiceNow or as a correlated event into a SIM tool. That's a good piece of information that security tools can see as a signal that means an investigation is worth having. It's not just sending all information and the backup software becoming noise. Make sure the events are meaningful. That will help bring infrastructure and security together, because we're suddenly passing really useful information. But don't actually rely just on one tool. The security and endpoint tools have got many methods. They've got thousands of customers and data points that they've built their engines on, and they're going to be one of the best ways of discovering something going on in your environment, especially early on in the attack chain. So let your cyber threat detection tools, if they find something, raise an alert, hopefully into your backup software that can take action on that with an automated workflow. With us, they can make an API call. We mark all the restore points with that file that they've flagged, and then we take an instant snapshot and then a backup from that, so that if the data gets damaged later on, we still have access to it. And what about recovery? Well, it's really important that you avoid reinfection. I talked about the need to be able to instantly recover into an isolated network and let the security teams run their tools. But if the security teams can integrate that into an automated workflow, and we've built Yara, which is used by many security tools, into our automated workflows. Security teams can pass you a Yara file based on something that they know has infected somewhere in the environment, and we can automatically run it through every single backup that we have and pinpoint any indicators of that strain of ransomware or any of the files that are typically used anywhere, and make sure that we clean that before we do recovery. But also it's proactive, if you know what I mean. You can do it continually based on recommendations from the security tools. We can use it to automatically find the last clean restore, and that's powerful. And we can recover with precision. We can look at IO anomalies, and if you're late in the attack, you suddenly see those IO changes. You can just drag a slide bar and get off to the races really quickly. So thank you. I hope those recommendations are going to help you. If you want to download the strategic research, here's it's a QR code as an alternative to the link. And let's move to the Q&A.
Absolutely. We've got so many questions rolling in, so we are definitely ready to get into that. Aaron, thank you for that wonderful presentation. Before we dive into audience questions, I'm just going to remind all of you out there, again, we have that wish list up on the screen for you. What would be the most helpful follow-up? So obviously lots of great information coming your way, and I see a lot of questions coming in around things like, hey, could I get some case studies? I'm interested in pricing information. That type of thing is a great follow-up. What is going to be helpful for you? So you can click on the wish list right there, and Veeam will send you exactly what you need. So hit the easy button, click on what you need, and while you're doing that, Aaron and I are going to dig into some of your questions. Aaron, are you ready?
Yeah, here I am.
Perfect. All right, Aaron, I want to start out with this one because it's a big one. Today, we're talking a lot about best practices, and I think there's a lot of ideas that are being thrown around. I'm wondering, and we got a question from the audience, and I'm going to pick this one out because it's a cool place to start our conversation. If there was one best practice that you would recommend, one thing that you would want everyone to do, what would that one thing be?
Now the challenge is answering it in one thing. Well, I would
I think if you start right at the beginning of this whole thing in terms of prevention, it's probably educating users of technology to avoid, the obvious phishing emails or other risk behaviors that might, open you up when you don't want to be. So long before everything else, I think continual education and games and tools that help people identify these kind of approaches.
So you think starting with if somebody out there was maybe just getting started on, let's say, building that understanding, and wanting to know where they need to actually start improving, because maybe they have an existing system and they're not sure if it's if it's good or not. If they're looking to assess whether or not they need to make improvements, when we talk about our 3 pillars today: prevention, mitigation, recovery, is there a recommendation that you would have for that first step for assessment?
Yeah, government agencies engaging in security tend to publish documents, and they keep getting updated as new capabilities come out as general. So I like the NIST SB 861 R2. It's got a whole. It really follows the lines of the title of this presentation, and it gives clear guidance of what you should be looking to have for each kind of phase. And you can simply start with, what do I have today, and then what does best look like, and then what's possible for my organization, maybe in the short term, and then maybe how do I get to a better level in the medium term and then the long term. So I would look at something like that.
I like that a lot. And Luis, you were asking what's the best practice, which I think is great. And I think, the answer being education, and that includes, and as you said, Aaron, education for your team and training is really important, but also constantly educating ourselves, looking at these resources, and starting with that general awareness. So those are great places to get started. Let's try, we got a couple of questions about integration and different integrations. I saw one come in about Zendesk, because you had mentioned ServiceNow. I'm also wondering if you could expand a little bit on integration with cybersecurity, and if you have any examples of that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the possibility, because of our APIs, is that we can integrate with many platforms. But we have an announced an agreement with Sophos, so that was an interesting one. That's where the specific integration between the two products. So that could be, when we've got a system of kind of alerts and rules that we can put in, and these are like to enforce policy, but also they could be strong indicators of some kind of potential compromise, like multiple failed logins to the console that's enabled with MFA. People don't typically have multiple failed, so we might raise that alert to Sophos, and that becomes a clear signal to a security team that should investigate. The other way, as I mentioned in the presentation, is a lot of the indicators of compromise aren't going to be found. Are going to be found by security tools, and have trained models on thousands of incidents and real world situations. Well, we have it that they can raise an alert into Veeam, and then we take that and we look for all impacted recovery points, and then we can inform in a central dashboard our administrators that there's something they have to address. And then I think you mentioned ServiceNow. Yeah, I mean, ServiceNow's a out of the box install. It just works, really simple to set up, but we'll be looking to do more. But again, with the APIs, it should be, if you've got some skills in that area, quite easy to do that. And also, just to let you know, we have a chat bot on our console these days that will write API code for you if you want to do some of that. That can help you as well.
Awesome. Okay, so lots of ways to get the integrations you need and get the solutions that you need. Aaron, you've given us so much to think about, and I really wish we could keep going with this, but we're going to have to leave it there. Before you go, though, if somebody does want to get started with Veeam, they want to jump in, what do you recommend? What is your suggestion for the first step?
I would just hit search Veeam and cybersecure. There's some useful assets there. ways to get started on the website. But then you can also go and look on our website for partners of different kinds, ones that resell product, implement product, or ones that offer our product as a service. And you can drill down by locations and what kind of skills you need, what kind of services you need. So that would be a good start too.
Awesome. Aaron, do you want to weigh in on our unofficial poll of the day today, Marvel versus DC? Any thoughts?
Well, whether you're talking the original graphic novels or the movies, because I kind of used to DC were my favorite graphic novels, but I kind of like the Marvel movies better.
This is the consensus, Aaron. You are finger right on the pulse of our community here today. Yes, it seems to be movies go to Marvel, comics or graphic novels go to DC. So with that, we will leave you. But Aaron, thank you so much for being here with us today. This has been a ton of fun.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right, and to everyone out there that's clicking on that wish list, keep that up. Data sheets, white papers, case studies, click on what you need. Let Veeam know how they can follow up with you. Don't forget to visit the handouts tab. Lots of great handouts. Veeam has this really cool brief on ransomware backup, 7 best practices for ransomware recovery, how to make recovery your top priority. So, Luis, I mentioned this earlier. You were asking, what's the best practice? What's the way to get started? Hey, there you go. It's right there for you in the handouts tab. 7 of them, 7 best practices to follow up on this conversation. So stay tuned for that. All right, William's saying just wait till the next DC reboot if you don't like them now. Uh-oh. Okay, William's got some fighting words going on out there. All right, my friends. Well, while you're clicking on handouts, while you're clicking on that poll there, let's go ahead and give away another prize. We have a $300 Amazon gift card and we have a Microsoft Surface Pro 9. Now, again, these are going to folks that are here live and present with us at the MegaCast. And our next lucky winners are Sean Campbell from Pennsylvania. You have won a $300 Amazon gift card. Sean Campbell, a $300 Amazon gift card, and the Microsoft Surface Pro 9 going to Russ Rossetti from California. Russ Rossetti, or possibly Ricchetti, also possibly Ricchetti. Not sure if that's a hard or a soft C. You can weigh in, Russ. Let me know. But Russ, you've won a Microsoft Surface Pro 9. Congratulations. We are going to be in touch with all of you after we wrap, so stay tuned for that. All right, and lots more chances to win ahead, so stay tuned, my friends. But we are going to keep things moving right along in this superhero-packed MegaCast today. Boy, am I having fun with all of you. All right, let's move things into our next presentation. And as you can see, we are definitely keeping the good times rolling because up next, we get to chat with the Commvault crew. I'm so happy to introduce you all to our next awesome expert here with us on the MegaCast. That is Guy Wiesel, Field CTO Security at Commvault. Guy, very happy to welcome you here to the MegaCast today. I know you've got a great session ahead. We're definitely going to save some time for questions. So I'm going to step back. I'm going to get you out here on the platform with me. Guy, take it away.
Thank you, Jess. I'm happy to be here. I'm Guy Wiesel, Field CTO Security here at Commvault. I'm actually 2 years already at Commvault. I joined following Tropic Security acquisition. Before that, I was former Chief Operating Officer at Tropic Security and was also managing cybersecurity services at Commvault, threat hunting, threat intelligence, forensic, a lot more. I was also CISO and CIO myself. So let's speak today about ransomware. Ransomware and malware targeting organization data, doing it today in unique ways, not like in the past. They use extortion, exfiltration, destruction, encryption. In the past, it was one endpoint that got encrypted. You then took a backup and you recovered that, and everything was okay. Sometimes it was one network segment. But today, there are already research that shows it has been increased by 83%. And even every 1 second, there are about 19 ransomware out there. So resiliency, it's the most important thing these days. And this is the reason also why CISO shift right and think about recovery, resiliency. And that's why we at Commvault can help them. Now, if you think about average cost of downtime, these numbers are just averages. For example, 9,000 per minute, 450 per hour, 87 million per year. This is just an average between sectors. But if you dive into some sectors such as financial, brokerage, service, or telecommunication, it gets sometimes even between $4 to $7 million per hour, which is huge loss. Now, the world has changed, and we see that data sprawl, and sometimes it's on premises, sometimes it's on cloud, sometimes it's multi-cloud. And ransomware is everywhere. It's including the backup. 99% of ransomware tampers with security and backup infrastructure. And attackers leveraging AI today, generative AI. So they use the generative AI in order to craft better scam emails, phishing email, better social engineering. They also do better develop exploitation on vulnerabilities. And what we see is that 90% of organizations report that cyber resilience is impacted by fractured tools. And what we see is that many of them have between 10 to 15 tools to secure their data. One tool, for example, for hypervisor, another tool for the cloud. And this costs a lot of money for them. And also, it's affecting cyber resilience. So the status quo falls short, and there are lots of tools, and you need to patch these tools, and you need to train people on all these tools. And there are some vendors that take approach of outdated appliance-based approach, where they put an appliance where both the control plane, data plane, and storage is all on the same appliance. So if there is a breach on one of these layers, then they get everywhere. So TCO is very important, and we have one unified management, and we reduced dramatically the TCO by 5 times other than our competitors. Now, we're the trusted leader in cyber resilience. We're number one in cyber resilience for more than 25 years and counting. We won the Gartner Magic Quadrant leader 12 years in a row now, and we're safeguarding more than 3 exabytes of data. We're the only FedRAMP high cyber resilience platform with over 1,400 patents. And we were the first one to have patents for ransomware protections and also any-to-any portability, and also the only vendor to offer clean room recovery. We help over 100,000 organizations around the world to secure their data. And when we speak about cyber resilience, it's a process that starts before the attack and it never ends. It's a continuous process and it's aligned with NIST framework and MITRA framework. If you look at it from perspective of risk, readiness, and recovery, what NIST and MITRA speaks about, then we have solutions for each one of these stages. We have solution for risk, for example, risk analysis. For readiness, we have cyber deception of threat-wise, and for recovery, for example, we have a validation service and clean room recovery, and many more solutions. And we continue to develop solutions around these downstream. And think about it that sometimes attacker is inside the organization for 200 days, and the customer does not even know about that. Now, these solutions that we have today around these areas are very important, and we will get to them. Now, some of our main pillars are first, data plane separation. Very important to have a resilient architecture where the control plane, the data plane, and the storage level plane are all separated. So even if one of them get breached, it doesn't mean that the attacker will reach the other one. And this is something that we make sure and exists in Commvault Cloud. Now, comprehensive security, having one unified management where you can manage all your workload. It doesn't matter if it's SAP HANA, it doesn't matter if it's hypervisor, it doesn't matter if it's a AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. You want to protect all your workload from one single place, one unified management. And with us, you can secure all your workload, any to any portability from the cloud to on-prem. Today, everyone is on-prem, on the cloud, multi-cloud. So we offer any-to-any portability and easy portability. Risk remediation to avoid exfiltration of data, to reduce the risk. We have solutions for that. And early warning also to detect silent threats and provide AI anomaly detection. We fight AI generative AI of attackers that we spoke about with AI. So we have anomaly framework that provides you early warning, and clean room recovery solution, which is a game changer, and we'll speak about it. So we offer Commvault Cloud Platform, which is a unified management, a one management single interface where you manage risk governance, readiness and response, and cyber recovery as platform services. And all that is managed by our AI-driven automation and generative AI interactions. And below that, you have the immutable backup data, which could be physical storage with warm lock, object lock, and could be also on cloud. Now, if you look at it from the attacker side, the attacker gaining initial access to the organization, it could be that is using generative AI and exploiting a new vulnerability, using USB is already inside, sending emails, one of the person double click is already in, right? And then he starts information gathering on crown jewels. He starts reconnaissance, lateral movement, privilege access, and then it could turn out with exfiltration of data, with destruction, or with encryption. We have solution around all these stages of pre-backup, during backup, and post-backup. I will not get now into each one of these, but you can see the names here. For pre-backup, we have ThreatWise and risk analysis and canary files and live anomaly. And for during backup, we have also live anomaly detection. And for post-backup, we have auto recovery, validation service, and clean room recovery. And all that, we use these services in order to protect and to have better cyber resilience for the customer. Now let's dive into risk, readiness, and recovery that we speak. So for risk, we have risk analysis, Commvault Cloud Risk Analysis, which allows you to scan PII data, very sensitive files, and then take actions against them. For example, files that contain password or files that contain social security number. And then you can start a process, take an action, requester to delete them, or someone will approve that, or set a new retention, or send it to archive, or move it to another server. You can do something with these files in order to avoid exfiltration of data ahead, so you're reducing the risk. And you can also look for overexposure files. For example, files that too many people has permissions to get into these folders or files, and then you can take actions on these files. For example, revoke permissions or do other things, and also check file storage optimizations and see if maybe there are files that contain orphan files or files of employees that already left and are vulnerable. So you could do that with risk analysis, with Commvault Cloud Risk Analysis. And then we have also our anomaly framework, where you can detect threats and unusual activity, and we alert even before the backup, during the backup, which means we alert on any unusual file activity, for example, deletion, encryption, remove of files. We alert immediately on that. And we also allows you to run threat scan, Commvault Cloud Threat Scan, in order to identify a clean recovery and then recover from that recovery. So with ThreatScan, you can also identify the malware name and it quarantine the infected malware automatically. So then it makes sure that you recover just a clean recovery point and not an infected one. This you use Commvault Cloud ThreatScan. And then we have also Security IQ poster dashboard, which allows you to have control to evaluate and continuously improve backup security stature, like things like multi-factor authentication, zero trust architecture, which is related with the control plan. For example, account lockout if NIST recommend on 60-second or all kinds of recommendation, you can take immediate action if you see that your score is low and then try to improve it and make informed recovery decision to exceed SLA objective. ThreatWise It's a very simple solution that assists you with readiness and response by setting up intelligent decoys that mimic and behave like legitimate assets. So you simply create a shadow network inside your network and around your workloads, both production and around the backups. And it could be industrial device, it could be backup servers, it could be database servers, it could be IoT devices, it could be related even with your industry. So if you're in the healthcare, you can set even fake MRI, fake CT, and the solution is very simple. No one's supposed to communicate with these decoys. Once they communicate with these decoys, you're getting alerts. And it's precise alerts, high fidelity, and every alert is real. And you get dynamic analysis, you get the full investigation, and the full cyber kill chain. This is an example of Volt Typhoon scenario. Volt Typhoon is a group that target US critical infrastructure. They did that by leveraging lul beans, which are living off the land binaries and lul scripts, where they succeeded to bypass EDRs and bypass traditional security solutions. Now, their scenarios, they bypass UAC and perform some credential activities, and they also leverage LSAS process, which is a legitimate Windows process in order to dump it and get credentials. And you can see that if, for example, in this scenario, the attacker is baited and lured using ThreatWise deception tokens to an RDP into a full system decoy, then you can see exactly what he's trying to do, although he bypassed the EDR and all the traditional security tools. So you see here that he's using PowerShell, and here you see that he dumped the LSAS process, and you see exactly what he's doing, and you can mitigate that immediately. And the Flux Typhoon targeted Taiwan's infrastructure by leveraging also sticky key and configuration manager. And they succeeded altering registry key. And for example, in the same scenario, if the attacker is baited into a full system decoy, then you see exactly the the edit that he's doing, the alter that he's doing to the registry, and then you see that he's trying to open the debugger, and from them succeed his attack. So this was just few examples, but if you look also at the MoveIt attack recently, the attacker succeeded to breach web vulnerabilities, and they leverage the MoveIt API. So they check from the server there is MoveIt API, for example, such as your post URL, and if you expose web decoys, then you can track these kind of things. Like you can track, for example, that attacker trying to upload a customized web shell into a web decoy. Okay, and more about readiness and response, we have Air Gap Protect solution, where you can set up a third copy, which is not on your cloud, but on Commvault Cloud SaaS cloud storage, and you can use it when you have chaos. You can use that in order to recovery from that air gap protect that copy, and you can use that also to do validations of recoveries and also use our clean room solution. We partnered here with Microsoft Azure, so you have the AirGap Protect, and then you can do validation on demand and recoveries to make sure that you have clean recoveries and also meet with compliance, because you can show evidence that you meet with compliance and you do these recoveries and ensure properly segmented recoveries to an isolated and very clean room. You have a chaos in your organization. This is a clean room that you have an opportunity to do these validation recoveries and make sure that everything is okay on demand. And last, you have also cyber recovery, autonomous recovery. Do that in scale, cloudburst. Do that failover and backfail, and make sure that everything operates as it should, from primary copy to secondary copy, execute proven recovery readiness in the event of a ransomware incident. And last, we fight AI-driven threats with industry-leading AI. So I mentioned we have the anomaly framework. You're getting unusual activity detected. It is sent directly to the SIEM or XOR. You get it as a second intelligence. The SOC team get it as a second intelligence. And we have also Ali, which also assists you to develop API in order to integrate better with other ecosystem. So it responds to inquiries. It assists you as a walkthrough to help the administrator to learn better, to find easier, clean recovery. AI-powered automated recovery validation and restore processes to speed responses in time. Thank you.
All right, Guy, thank you so much. What a wonderful presentation. I had lots of great insights for the audience, and clearly that resonated because we've got a lot of questions coming in. I want to get to as many of those as we can in the short time we have. So, Guy, you ready to jump in?
Yeah, sure. My
All
pleasure.
right, let's do it. This is an interesting question here because we've got somebody looking ahead, and I always like to start with that sort of what are the trends, what do we see coming? So, question here: what are the top challenges that you expect to see in the following year, especially when we're thinking about protecting our organizations from ransomware and other APT attacks? What do you think is the number one thing to be worried about, Guy?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, attackers leveraging these days AI, and they
Mm,
exploit more vulnerabilities. It makes it easier for them to develop also 0 days attacks and also to develop ransomware that are combined also with supply chain attacks. And this is one of the top things. Now, it makes it easier also to craft better phishing emails and doing better social engineering. And you all heard about the mother of all breaches. This is going to add lots of stuff into that. So supply chain attack combined with ransomware pose risk of destructive of thousand organizations at the same time. We have also, if you think about it, Windows, web, IoT entry points, and also
right.
cloud native attack landscape is going to increase. Silent and stealth techniques attack. We spoke about leaving off the land binaries, leaving off the land scripts like Vault, Flux Typhoon, nation state actors in today's complicated world.
That's right. It is certainly a complicated world, and there's a lot to think about. And actually, that ties in nicely to our next question, which we're really digging into the challenges and the things to be worried about. So I'm hoping we can wrap up with some positivity in just a second, Guy. But when we're thinking about these challenges, our next question here is: what are the main challenges, the main obstacles, and then the solutions? There we go. There's some optimism that you might propose concerning new regulatory changes and compliances related to data privacy, cybersecurity, and so on. What do you think, Guy? What is the biggest problem? And
Yeah,
then,
so
give us some hope. What's the
great.
biggest solution?
So very good question. So we spoke about risk, readiness, and recovery.
Right.
And this is very related because if you think about it, latest regulation such as DORA, the second amendment to 23 NYCRR Part 500 for insurance, and DORA is for financial. Then these two that is going to affect in Europe hundreds of thousand organizations.
Hmm.
SEC, they're all referred to, for example, validations that they need to do of their recovery, like using the solution that we have, Clean Room Recovery. Many of them refer also to reporting obligations, and we assist by sending the second intelligence data for reporting obligation and making them it makes them easier to confirm that this is a cyber incident and doing also the forensic analysis because we send them valuable data
Right.
which is from the anomaly detection from our AI and also from ThreatWise, and also reporting on silent threat. And we use also this innovation, and these actually these regulations speaks about using innovation. Some of them say it clearly, use AI. Some of them say use sophisticated and try to make it efficiency and orchestrated. So we use cyber recovery, as I mentioned, to orchestrate to make things efficiency, cloud burst, auto recovery. This is all related with efficiency, streamlining the process by connecting to their SIEM, to their XOR, and protecting also the software itself. SSDLC, zero trust architecture, all these regulations refer to that. And PCI DSS version 4 even requests to try to patch within the same months once the vendor release a patch. So you can use ThreatWise as a compensatory control for that.
You know, that's really interesting. And I'm thinking it feeds in once again nicely to our next question. This is great. We're on a real flow right now with these questions because we've started with some of the challenges. And you've been mentioning ways that you can kind of integrate in with SIM and SOAR. And I want to dig into that a little bit further as well, because a question came in about integrations with third-party security tools that can improve the incident response process. And I think this is a big concern for folks in the audience is wondering how it's going to integrate with their overall and existing security platform and program. So talk to us about the integrations.
Yeah, excellent question. So customers have their own security tools today, and we're not here to replace these tools. We want them to continue, of course, using these tools, and they use them in order to detect faster, and they get from us second intelligence. And for example, we integrate today with Palo Alto XOR and with Microsoft Sentinel, and also with CyberArk, and we're capable of creating ticket with ServiceNow. And they, on their playbook, they can, for example, disable data aging of our backup, or they can disable users at risk. And also we can connect to any SIEM and any XOR using webAuth, using syslog. And we're also soon going to support more vendors and getting, for example, suspicious servers where you're gonna be able to run the threat scans on that and have and make sure that the server is clean, the backup of that server is clean. And we have also integration with for ThreatWise, both with network access control, with EDR, with Sandbox, with VirusTotal, and we continue to do more and more integration with more and more players. And it's very, very important. This is important also to streamline the process that we spoke about and to improve the orchestrations, which also the regulation refer to. So it's all combined.
Well, I love that. And I wish we could keep exploring that guy because clearly there's many more pathways to walk down in this conversation and lots more to learn. Unfortunately, we are going to have to leave it there. We're a little short on time, but with our few remaining seconds, can you let us know if somebody out there is really excited, wants to jump in with Commvault, wants to learn more, what would you suggest is the best first step?
Sure, they can go to our website and they can start from there. They can submit the request, contact us, and they can start from there.
Perfect. All right. Nice and easy first step. And to everyone out there who asked a question that we did not get to, don't worry. We are going to get those over to the Commvault team. So you will get some answers back. For now, we're going to wrap up this conversation. Guy, thank you so much for being here with us. It has been so much fun chatting with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, and we've got that poll up for all of you. Again, this is your wish list. What additional information would be helpful for you? Are you more interested in maybe a data sheet? Maybe you want that white paper. Maybe the case study is really calling your name. Whatever the case may be, click on that wish list. Get what you're looking for. All right, well, I'm loving all the high fives and positivities. I see you, Eric. I see you, Aish. That's awesome. I'm loving this. We are going to keep things rolling, but before we do, Daniel also chiming in. Lots of good vibes out there today. What a positive crew we have here with us at this MegaCast. And that's excellent because we've got a few more sessions in store and I know that they are going to keep the good times rolling. But before we move things along, first, I want to remind you about the Handouts tab. If you have not visited the Handouts tab, make sure that you do. This is a great next step to exploring the cyber resilience solutions available to you from Commvault. So click on that link, open that tab. There are all kinds of resources there for you, ways to get in touch, ways to learn more. You can watch a video exploring the platform, but you're going to open that tab, you're going to save it for later because you're going to want to go back and revisit it after we wrap, but it's not time just yet because there's still more to do in our session yet. I'm also going to give away a prize, and then we're going to move things along here, but I do want to say how much I appreciate all the wonderful questions and comments coming in from all of you today. Again, we're seeing a lot of strong contenders for that best question asked card. I'm reading through it. It is going to be tough to decide. All right, well, speaking of prizes, we've got a $300 Amazon gift card as well as a Microsoft Surface Pro. And that is going, so a $300 Amazon gift card going to Mike Ryan from Indiana. Mike Ryan from Indiana, and our Microsoft Surface Pro going to Arthur Wong from California. That might be Arthur Wong, I'm not sure. Either Arthur or Arthur Wong from California. You have won. And don't worry, we'll reach out. We'll send you a message. And either way, if you have any questions about the terms and conditions, I did see a couple questions coming in about specific states and whether or not they're eligible. The full terms and conditions are there for you in the handouts tab. So head on over and check those out. Again, the biggest one, first and foremost, you need to be here live and present at the MegaCast. But as I always say, where else would you want to be, right, my friends? This is where it's at today. We got superheroes, we got active debates about Marvel versus DC, and we got all kinds of awesome information coming our way about ransomware as we break apart these three incredible pillars and really dig into how you can supercharge your ransomware strategies. Nothing could be better, right? Oh wait, I stand corrected because up next we have the Rubrik crew here with us. How's that for a segue? I'm giving that segue a gold star. All right, I am so excited to introduce you all to our next presenter on today's MegaCast, and it is just an absolute day of powerhouse teams. Here we are with Rubrik and Zoltan Deek, Product Marketing Director at Rubrik. We are going to hand things over to you, Zoltan, because I know you've got a lot of information to cover. You've got a cool presentation looking ahead at new ways to get prepared in 2024. Can't wait to hear more. I'm going to step back. The platform is all yours.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Zoltan Diak, and I focus on our security products and capabilities here at Rubrik. At its heart, ransomware is about encrypting data or locking up systems, and of course, holding those things hostage for a fee to unlock them. But there are different ways that attackers apply that concept to maximize their success and the return on their investment. And it's an investment. More and more, ransomware is a professional big business. These are professionals that go to work every day and innovate on new techniques to become more effective at their craft. They study what works and what doesn't and come up with new ways to be successful. Today, I'm here to talk about some different ways we're seeing attackers innovate with ransomware to successfully compromise organizations. I'm not going to talk about specific ransomware types, but rather how attackers are putting those ransomware types into practice to gain leverage, target systems, and gain more effectiveness. After that, we'll talk about things you can do to maximize your success against these practices. But I'm not going to talk about prevention. I'm sure there are a lot of webinars you can attend that'll talk about the latest technologies and how they leverage machine learning and AI to detect and prevent new and unknown ransomware strains. And those are absolutely critical things to keep your organization safe. But we all know the fact is that while you need to be successful with prevention all the time, bad guys only need to be successful with an attack once. It's almost inevitable that you'll be hit by ransomware at some point. And there are things you can and should be doing to reduce your data exposure, reduce your risk of exfiltration, and enable yourself to recover more quickly and safely. What I'm talking about is cyber resilience, where even if you get hit, your business is still able to stand strong and move forward. So assuming a breach will happen, I'll talk about some not so well-known sources of intelligence and tooling you should have in your backup systems already that can help you reduce your ransomware risk, minimize the impact if you do get hit, and recover faster and safer. All right, so with that, let's get to it. In the past year or so, we've seen 3 different ransomware approaches in particular really gaining momentum. Double or multiple extortion ransomware, ransomware targeting your hypervisors, and remote encryption ransomware. They're all ransomware, but they all leverage various wrinkles to get the job done. So let's talk about each of them. All right, so first let's talk about double extortion ransomware. The ransomware model itself is pretty well known, right? Where the bad guys find a way into your system, locate critical data or systems, and encrypt it, holding it hostage for a fee. With double extortion, attackers not only encrypt your data for ransom, but they take it a step further by also exfiltrating that data and then threatening to release it publicly, charging another ransom, the double extortion, to withhold it. This is, of course, requires the extra step on their part in being able to steal your data, get it out of your network. But as organizations have gotten better and better at preventing ransomware, this has become a great way for attackers to make money, especially given that there are ever-increasing regulatory requirements for keeping both sensitive and regulated data private. So by threatening to release it, they're putting even more pressure on organizations to pay the attackers the ransom they're demanding. In fact, late in 2023, we even saw a ransomware group report one of its victims to the SEC. So the attacker knew the victim was aware of the breach, but hadn't reported it yet. So by reporting the victim to the SEC, they're trying to put even more pressure on the victim to pay the ransom and face even more pain and regulatory fines. So if double extortion is about layering a second form of extracting a ransom on top of the first by adding data theft to data encryption, let's also talk about how attackers can target their attacks to do major damage. Now, it's no secret organizations are increasingly relying on virtualization. As critical infrastructure and business systems continue to be virtualized, threat actors have responded in kind by deploying ransomware that impacts hypervisor software. According to Rubric Zero Labs, in 2022, 73% of all ransomware affected virtualization infrastructure. So virtualization, and as such, the use of hypervisors, is a key component of IT infrastructure for businesses of all sizes. So it represents a pretty attractive target for bad actors. These attacks can be particularly nasty as there's typically no ability to install EDR or antivirus at the hypervisor level. And if you're running VMs, you're probably monitoring your infrastructure using tools that run in a VM. So if the VMs running your monitoring stack are encrypted, chances are the first you find out about it is when you get to the office and everything is down. Even worse, if your data protection tooling relies on virtual machines and these are encrypted, it's going to be incredibly hard to recover your business. So while many people think about ransomware as mass encryption of data, it can in fact be very targeted to deliver the most damage and take out defenses and your ability to recover quickly. Attackers are especially good at being able to target systems that are underprotected. So let's talk about another way that they do this. Remote encryption attacks. Not new technology, but it's one that's evolved and really seems to be driven in large part by the increase in remote work over the past several years. So remote ransomware attacks happen when attackers use one compromised device to encrypt data on other devices on the same network. Doesn't sound that unusual, right? What's sneaky about this is that it can avoid triggering all of the targeted devices' security defenses, whether ingress analysis and blocking, payload execution, and encryption on the endpoint they've already compromised. So the newly targeted device just never sees it coming. So once attackers succeed in compromising a device, they can leverage that organization's domain architecture to encrypt data on managed domain joined machines. So all the malicious activity, ingress, payload execution, and encryption occurs on the already compromised machine, and bypasses modern security stacks that way. The only indication of compromise is really the transmission of documents to and from other machines. So it's a good example of, yet again, attackers not bothering to break in, they're just logging in. The average number of devices used by employees to access their corporate networks is something like 2.5. So you have your corporate laptop, and maybe sometimes you're logging in using a personal laptop, maybe a tablet, something unmanaged by corporate IT. That means those devices generally don't have, again, any sort of EDR or XDR or other type of security solution. By compromising and running malware on this machine, an attacker can encrypt anything they can reach in the corporate network and still remain undetected. So according to Microsoft's 2023 Digital Defense Report, about 60% of ransomware attacks involve remote encryption. On top of that, about 80% of all compromises come from unmanaged devices. So just imagine your own corporate network where you might have thousands of devices connected. All it takes is one underprotected device to compromise an entire network. So cyber criminals really favor remote ransomware attacks because they're an easy way to scale. This scalability also makes these attacks dangerous to enterprises, right? That's because that single vulnerable endpoint jeopardizes an entire organization's network, even if all the other devices are protected by advanced security protections. So attackers are also not limited to specific ransomware variants. Many well-known families like WannaCry, Ryuk, and Lockbit all support remote encryption capabilities. Traditional endpoint security products often fail to spot and stop remote ransomware attacks because they're focused on detecting malicious files and processes on the protected endpoint. However, because that malicious process runs on the compromised machine in remote ransomware attacks, those security products, again, rendered ineffective in stopping the spread of encrypted network endpoints. So really kind of a clever, insidious way to attack. All right, so you're thinking to yourself, great, thanks for the information, Zoltan. Now, why is Rubrik, a data protection vendor, talking to me about this, other than to restore my backups if I get hit? Well, when it comes to ransomware and just about any other cyber attack for that matter, the target's your data, specifically your high-value sensitive data. And while it's not a source a lot of people think of first, what better place to understand your data so you can better secure it than your backup snapshots, which contain all your data? If you're using Rubrik as your data protection vendor, you have not only an immutable air-gapped backup as your ultimate insurance against ransomware, but you have the unique advantage of being able to access the intelligence within that data, organized and collated over time. We call it time series data. If you think about being able to view all your data over time, this offers insights that can inform you as to data risk that becomes critical during an attack. All right, so how do we practically apply this? How does this practically help you? First things first, we want to know and get alerted when there's an encryption event, right? It's a pretty good indicator of a ransomware attack. There are vendor solutions out there for things like anomaly detection, where they're going to scan all your files all the time. And as you can imagine, this just doesn't scale. It's going to take a week to scan your entire environment, and by the time it's done, your environment has already changed 1,000 times over. Rubrik scans your backup snapshots. So it happens offline. It's based off changes to what we see over time, not scanning your whole environment every time. You're not impacting production performance, but also in an attack, it's likely many of the tools you're using to detect and alert you to incidents are down. So Rubrik uses a dual machine learning model where it looks for a change rate. If it sees any difference in that change rate, it'll work out what changed. We're also looking at VM level attacks. So this is covering the modern encryption attack I mentioned earlier and the legacy in-guest encryption model. And of course, this can be plugged into your existing automation frameworks such as ServiceNow and SIM tools like Splunk or Microsoft Sentinel. If an attack has occurred, Rubrik automates the assessment of the blast radius to quickly understand what applications and files were impacted and when. So this eliminates the intensive manual labor required. So for example, bringing up a virtual machine copy, manual comparing and scrubbing for changes. So bottom line, in the event of an attack, you can quickly identify which applications, virtual machines, and files were impacted and where they're located. You minimize the time spent discovering what happened and the data loss with granular visibility into the latest unaffected files. Next, your highest value targets are your most sensitive and regulated data. You should absolutely be using your backup data for sensitive data discovery and classification. If you don't know what's in your environment, you cannot protect it. And on top of that, if data has been stolen, you're going to need to understand the blast radius. A lot of people might say they already have DLP, and that's going to stop data theft. And DLP is great for stopping an employee from stealing a spreadsheet, for example. But in a ransomware attack, it's a bit useless because the attacker already has an encrypted backdoor into your environment to steal things. So they're walking that data out. They're not sneaking it. And maybe you've already invested in some sort of data classification tools, and that's great. Why use your backup snapshots to do this instead? Usually, because of the cost and licensing, you're probably only focused on the top 20 to 40% of the sensitive data in your landscape. Using your backup data is the closest you're going to get to 100% visibility across your environment because it's scanning everything you're backing up. And by the way, because you're scanning your backup snapshots, you're not deploying and managing agents in a production environment. You're not sacrificing network performance and using valuable people resources. You're taking advantage of the intelligence that already exists offline in your backup snapshots. Sensitive data monitoring allows you to proactively mitigate your risk of data theft in the first place. Not just your on-prem data, but your unstructured data, your data in the cloud, your O365. With the right tooling in your enterprise backup, you can identify your critical data assets and their specific risks and remediate those risks before malicious actors can exploit them. And what's one way to mitigate that risk? Well, knowing where sensitive data is only half the battle. It's just as important to know who has access to that data and how risky that access is. Let's take an example. With Rubrik's user access capabilities, you can scan your backup snapshots and identify credit card data and say that data is high risk. Here are the specific users who have access to it and how that access has changed over time. So maybe yesterday they had access to this number of files, and today they have access to 10% more. And the risk level of those files they just gained access to is higher, lower, or right in the middle of where it was before. Again, this is all this analysis is run in your backup environment with no impact to production. So what user access lets you know is who has access to sensitive data and a historical view of changes over time. If you think about it, every user who has access to sensitive data represents a risk. With the visibility I've described, you can proactively enact least privilege access to greatly reduce that risk. Again, this is intelligence and tooling you should have through your data protection vendor, like Rubrik, not another siloed, single functioning security tool. All right, so even after you've reduced your risk by identifying and safeguarding your sensitive data, we also want to always monitor for attacks on that data. Your network is a constantly shifting organism with new devices and assets coming online that may not always be fully protected. Threats get through, right? So by automatically scanning your backup data for threats, you have a last line of defense. Teams can perform in-depth threat analysis offline without requiring agents to be deployed. Once again, you'll notice the theme on critical infrastructure. So this better protects organizations against these lurking data threats. So Rubrik threat monitoring, for example, combines intelligence from third-party threat feeds with proprietary intelligence from Rubrik Zero Labs, which is our data threat intelligence unit, and Rubrik's own InfoSec team to automatically identify indicators of compromise within backup snapshots. Threat monitoring then proactively scans for threats out of band from production infrastructure based on that vetted threat intel, which accelerates investigation and reduces the risk of reinfection. The things I've just described are proactive measures you can take to reduce your overall risk level when it comes to ransomware and ultimately control your blast radius. Control the potential impact if and when you get hit. But what about when you're actually in it? When you realize you have been hit? In a ransomware event, you're going to need to understand as quickly as possible what your nearest clean recovery point is. It's critical to get this right to minimize the amount of data lost without reintroducing the attack into your environment. That same intelligence does a lot for you when you're trying to identify a clean recovery point to come back to. And Rubrik, to that end, offers built-in threat hunting. What that means is we can sweep for IOCs, specific IOCs, the malware, the remote access tools in your offline data. You can use Yara rules, files, hashes. With your team having to recover a single server, we can tell you a clean recovery point per server in your environment, right? So because you're scanning backups, we can show you not just where malware might live, but when it was presented into your environment. With traditional malware scanning, you're only scanning what's in production. But with Rubrik, because you have that time series data at your fingertips, that historical ledger of backups, you can find not only where it is, but exactly how long it's been there and when it was introduced. So you can decide exactly when you want to recover to safely. And that capability is available regardless of the state of your production infrastructure. So once again, right, in an attack, everything in your production systems may be down. You may be waiting for the go-ahead to recover, but it's that chicken and egg where you need recovery to happen in order to use the tools for security to give you the go-ahead. So by leveraging tools and backups, you can make all of those decisions, get the insight you need, get all the information you need offline. You don't need to get online to get that intelligence. So think about the value there in a situation where you've been hit by ransomware, right? You're trying to figure out what is under the control of the attacker versus what was encrypted. We're immediately going to clear that up and tell you these are the specific servers the attackers have persistence and control over. The other 99% of your environment, they're just victims, right? So it's not just speeding up your time to recovery point selection, it's also helping you reduce your data loss, because those compromised servers probably need to be recovered back, say, at least a week ago to where you need to just accept the data loss there, right? The other 99% just victims, right? So you can just recover back to yesterday because they don't have anything malicious in them. If you aren't using your backups to do this, you're just accepting greater data loss because you need to treat everything as malicious. Remember, the actual recovery time of your business isn't the time it takes to recover your data. It's the time it takes to scan the data, find the recovery point, then recover it. Using a threat hunting tool native to your backup is a huge game changer. All right, so what I've spoken about here today are some examples, just examples of how you can protect yourself against ransomware, regardless of the new or targeted techniques attackers are using. Detection and prevention capabilities are always going to be hugely important. We always want to discover and stop everything we possibly can. At the same time, we know attacks are going to get through, and it's critical to put ourselves in the best possible position to control the damage and recover quickly. The goal at the end of the day isn't to stop every attack. It's to make sure that those attacks don't significantly impact your business. By leveraging the intelligence and tooling you should already have in modern backup and recovery tools, you can proactively reduce your risk, reduce your exposure, and give yourself the ability to recover more quickly and safely so your business is resilient against the attacks that do hit you. So I hope I've shed some light on the powerful capabilities you can and should be leveraging in your data protection platform today. That's going to really help you accomplish those things. And I had time to just scratch the surface though, right? So Rubrik's a market leader in data protection, and it's the core of everything we do. But we've also seen how layering in these cyber posture and cyber recovery capabilities into the data protection platform gives our customers critical capabilities that enable them to achieve cyber resilience. So you can learn more about what we can do for you at rubrik.com. And finally, just to wrap up, if you're interested in more about what's happening in today's data security landscape, I encourage you to check out the latest report from Rubrik Zero Labs. It's a quick read, a ton of insights into current data realities, and real recommendations to secure that data for the future. All right. I hope this has been informative. Thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you, Zoltan. What a great presentation. So much awesome information, lots of cool takeaways. I could see the high fives and kudos coming in from the audience for both you as a presenter and the insight that you gave our audience. And I love that. It is definitely a good time feel here today. Speaking of which, we have 2 follow-ups for all of you to keep those good times rolling, right? First, the wish list. You already know what it is. We've talked about it a bunch on the MegaCast today, so I don't need to explain it again, but a quick reminder, this is your easy button. This is your future self is going to look back at this moment and say, hey, past self, well done. Nice work. You did it, because you're going to click on that screen and then all the good info is just going to come right to you without you having to lift a finger. So lift one finger now, put it right down on the wish list, and then no fingers lifted from then on, right? Okay, one more finger lifted because I have one more task for you, and that is to visit the handouts tab. Make sure that you've got the ebook from Rubrik, Becoming Unstoppable Against Ransomware, right? Love that. And very apropos to our theme here today, our sub-theme, our unofficial sub-theme of the MegaCast, how real-life heroes are harnessing the power of zero trust data security. So make sure you get, there's no DC Marvel argument here. It just heroes, just superheroes harnessing the power of zero trust data. So be sure you get that handout. Be sure you click on that wish list and make sure that you've got your questions in. I see Vinay says always good stuff from Rubrik. I agree. You can always count on Rubrik for a great presentation. I do want to make sure that you guys know that all the questions that you're asking, as I said, we are seeing them and we are getting them over to the team. So you are going to get answers back to all of your questions. I don't know if they will give you their feedback on your Marvel DC opinions, but they sure will give you their opinion on all of your ransomware related questions. So keep those coming. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and give a prize away. Larry says, excellent presentations, well worth the time. Larry, that is awesome. I love hearing that. I know you guys are all busy, and it's so nice that you take time out of your days to come hang with us. Love that feedback. All right, prize giveaway time. Speaking of now, our turn to give back to you. We're going to give away a $300 Amazon gift card, and this is going to someone who is here live and present with us at the MegaCast, and that lucky winner of a $300 Amazon gift card is Holden Gable of Nebraska. Holden Gable of Nebraska. All right, Holden, congratulations. We're going to follow up with you after we wrap. We're going to follow up with all our winners, including that best question gift card from each one of our sessions. So stay tuned for that. A reminder again, that's a $50 Amazon gift card that we are evaluating all the questions asked after we wrap, and we're following up with that best question gift card winner at the end of our MegaCast. So just by asking a question, you are entered to win. And here's the good news. There is still one more chance to win as we head into our very last presentation of the day. That's right, my friends. We have come to it. We are here at the last presentation of our MegaCast, but never fear, we are not wrapping things up or winding things down. In fact, we are ramping right up with the Lacework crew. I am so happy to introduce you all to our very last speaker of the day, our grand finale, and that is James Condon, Director of Security Research at Lacework. Cool title, cool guy, great content, all of it coming your way. James, I'm going to get you on out here on the platform with me and hand things on over to you. Take it away, James.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this presentation, Cloudy with a Chance of Threats. I'm James Condon, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the active threat landscape in the public cloud. As far as what we're going to be doing, I'll do a brief introduction of myself, go over some of the goals that I'm hoping you all can take away from this. Then we'll talk about the top active threats that we're seeing in the cloud. We'll talk about this area, this gray area, the shared responsibility model that we like to refer to as international waters. And then we'll wrap up with some mitigations that we hope you'll find helpful in your security defenses. Okay, so I'm James. I lead our security research team here at Lacework, also known as Lacework Labs. I've spent my career in security, starting off in the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, investigating computer crimes, then as an analyst at Mandiant, and then doing security research for ProtectWise. So my background is mostly incident response, threat intelligence, and a bit of forensics. As far as this presentation goes, really I want this to be designed as a high-level one-on-one type course on what the active threats that are currently going on in the cloud. I'm hoping that you can take away some practical advice on mitigating these, and hopefully there's a few new things or different ways of prioritizing that you can walk away from this with. And then last but not least, at a minimum, I'm hoping that you learn a few interesting things along the way. Okay, so let's see what's going out in the wild. These aren't attack simulations, but things that are based in what we are actually observing. So when I like to describe threats, especially when we're talking in the context of the cloud, typically I like to talk a little bit about the threat actors associated. So we'll talk a little bit about nation state and criminal actors. Then, since this is a very large landscape, I like to break it down into a few different areas. I like to talk about the cloud control plane for your cloud service provider, talk about the workloads themselves, touch on Kubernetes since so many folks are using that. We'll talk a little bit about SaaS applications, how supply chain ties those together. And then to really understand the threats that we're seeing, we need to also think about what are the major objectives. So we'll touch on data theft and extortion, resource hijacking, and disruption of services. Okay, so this is a very generalized view, but the main idea is if you understand who the threat actors are, it's a bit easier to figure out what sort of techniques you need to defend against and what their objectives are and how you can use that knowledge to have better protections. In context of the cloud, I've kind of talking about these two groups as very large buckets. There is overlap between these, but in general, when we talk about nation state and APTs, we're generally talking about a group that is working on behalf of some sort of other government. It's carrying out those objectives. These objectives are usually data theft. Sometimes they're espionage. Other times it's economic advantage, so trying to get some sort of gain over some of the competition. Now, within these groups, we typically think of them as being highly sophisticated. It's kind of a wide range of sophistication. Sometimes it's a lot of personnel with kind of mid-level sophistication or a very small group of highly sophisticated. The other type of actor I want to talk about is criminal. So we see a lot of this in the cloud. The main difference here is criminals are their main objective is going to be financially motivated. So this can be everything from well-organized groups that are working with other criminal groups that may even be working with nation state, to just individuals who are looking to make some money and looking for opportunities. Generally, the objectives that we're going to see here is resource hijacking, data ransom, and extortion. Okay, in the next series of slides, I'm going to kind of break apart the actual attack surface and talk about the threats that we primarily see in each. So the first one is the cloud control plane. So this is your cloud service provider like AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, other clouds as well. And it's essentially that control plane that allows you to use their services. Now, the primary threat that we're seeing a lot of is identity compromises. So if this is AWS, we're talking about compromised users, we're talking about compromised roles. Over the past 4 years, we've seen what feels like an exponential increase in this, despite several mitigations being put in place to reduce the chance of this. But as an anecdote, in 2023, we've observed hundreds of these. We've even had a few instances where on the same day, the same actor breaches multiple victims. Often we're asked, how are these identities compromised? This has been going on for a while. There's a lot of different ways that this can come about, and some are getting mitigated well, and then there's some that are still a little bit unknown. But in general, there's compromises from vulnerabilities that lead to access of credentials, whether it's an application storing it or an application that can call a service to get it. Sometimes it's accidents like uploading them to repositories. Even though there's a number of protections for these in places like GitHub, there's other public places that people might accidentally upload these. Phishing is another one. Access brokers, you can think of those as underground forums where access to different environments is sold. And like I mentioned, sometimes we just don't know exactly how these were taken over. The reason I highlight this as kind of a top threat is it underpins a lot of attacks that are going to happen in the cloud. And detecting identity compromise sounds easy in practice, or sounds easy in theory, but it's often difficult in practice. This is because there's a lot of log sources or there's a lot of data within your logs. If you have a lot of different accounts, it can be difficult to kind of track down. But either way, this should be a focal point for your detection and response teams. Misconfigurations are still prevalent, but it looks a lot better than it did, I would say, 3 or 4 years ago, when the primary threats that we were seeing were folks accessing open S3 buckets or databases that were connected and unsecured. So I'll give you a quick example of something that we blogged about. This is called Androx Ghost. It's some Python malware. The way it operates is it will do mass scanning of the internet looking for Laravel environment files. This is a PHP web framework. Now, if it finds them, it'll parse these environment files, and it's looking for all kinds of different secrets, whether it's AWS, SendGrid, or Twilio. If it gets the AWS keys, typically what we'll see is some SMTP spam abuse. We'll see backdoor users being created, and then possibly hands-on keyboard interaction with the console. This malware can also spread laterally by brute forcing SSH. The interesting anecdote with this one is when we discovered it in 2022, the volume of scanning was extremely high. We saw about 40% of the environments we monitor being scanned by this threat. So what we're seeing here is these attacks kind of ramping up and how prolific they are. Okay, the next piece of the attack surface I'd like to talk about is the workloads. So this is your compute, it's your Linux hosts, it's your Windows hosts. In general, how these get compromised follows this workflow here. Usually it starts with mass scanning for exposed vulnerabilities. One thing I'll highlight here is we did a blog on out-of-band application security tools. So these are primarily used for pen testers being able to enumerate different vulnerabilities. But now we see attackers find these to be very popular to use for scanning on the internet. Project Discovery is one of the most popular ones. So what we'll observe is there'll be everything from security researchers when a new CVE comes out, getting an idea of how much the internet's affected. And then we'll also see threat actors essentially building up target lists to go after. So once scanning's complete, targets are found, next step is exploitation. And generally, there's a number of other pieces of malware that will be installed. So typically, there'll be some sort of script that will prepare the system for installation. We'll see modules for lateral movement, cryptojacking, denial of service. A lot of times, we'll see these attempt to move laterally to other workloads. And then more concerning is evidence of actors trying to get from the workload into the cloud control plane. So here we have a few other threats that we've covered in a few different blogs. These are just kind of examples of what we're seeing where the workload is the primary initial infection vector. Kinsing is a prolific threat that we see quickly adopting remote code CVEs, primarily engaged in cryptojacking. Down this list a little bit is dark IoT. This is a botnet used for DDoS attacks, also adopting CVEs very quickly. But you'll see that in general, even though the objectives are a little bit different, there's a lot of different threats taking advantage of new vulnerabilities that are published and creating botnets to carry out their objectives. The next piece of the service I'm going to talk about of the attack surface is Kubernetes threats. So a lot of people are using Kubernetes to orchestrate their containers. This has a good overlap with workloads. But specifically when we talk about Kubernetes threats, we're talking about kind of two major scenarios. One is the control plane to Kubernetes. So the API server, basically anything where you can control the orchestration service itself. And then escaping from the containers or pods to the underlying hosts, which can provide other pivots, such as into the cloud control plane. Listed here are kind of the top initial access that we'll see when it relates to Kubernetes. Now, this is just kind of a quick example tying together what we talked about in the workload piece. Here we have the Kinsing threat, targeting things like Postgres SQL, WebLogic, WordPress, using infected hosts to scan for other vulnerabilities. Within Kubernetes, generally we'll see a C2 channel get established. And then reverse shell activity. And then the interesting thing for escaping out of these pods is typically when we think of container breakouts, there's just this really large range of techniques from just taking advantage of a poorly configured container all the way down to actually having some pretty technical and intricate exploits. Typically, these actors, what we see is they want to find something where they can deploy new pods or containers, deploy them in a misconfigured state such that it's trivial for them to break out of the container and get to the host. So it's kind of a workaround where they get around the fence by creating their own fence with a hole in it, so to speak. Another big and growing even bigger piece of the attack surface is SaaS applications. So as a little bit of background, there's many reports that companies adopting SaaS applications is growing pretty dramatically. This opens up a very large attack vector in which a lot of these actors can accomplish their objectives without having to use your cloud infrastructure, like your cloud service provider and the workloads that you have running on it. I've listed out a few different examples here. One is customer engagement SaaS tool being taken over to exfiltrate victims' data. Others are data extortion by gaining access to SharePoint accounts. And we have things about Microsoft's OAuth and also some other SaaS applications. But the theme here is really kind of the same. SaaS is an area that you might be storing very sensitive information, and different pieces of your organization might be using it. It can be hard to wrangle these in, and actors might go for this as kind of a low-hanging fruit or just another angle to come at. Another piece of the attack surface to kind of tie these all together is your supply chain. So if you're developing applications in the cloud, you have first-party code, and that's the code that your organization is developing for your applications. And then you have third-party code, which is existing code that you're using within your own software. Now, as these applications get very large, you start introducing a lot of different dependencies. And within these dependencies, you're not always going to know how these different pieces of code are actually being secured, how the maintainers are conducting their own security. And we've seen a number of real-world examples here, like SolarWinds, CodeCove, and Kessia, that show how difficult and how troubling that supply chain attacks can be. Now, we'll kind of illustrate a little example here that ties together a bunch of the different things that we talked about. So we've mostly spoken about criminal actors and them going after resources for crypto mining or denial of service. A lot of times what we'll see in the APT cases is you'll see some sort of managed service provider or SaaS provider get compromised, and they're used as a conduit to get into the victims that are the customers of that organization. So Jump Cloud was an example of that. It's a cloud-based IT management service. Essentially, this was taken over via supply chain attack attributed to some North Korean APT actors. But the important thing to note here is that the attacker used Jump Cloud to pivot to other companies as it made its attack. So the main thing here is we highlighted a lot of different pieces of the attack surface, and they can kind of be used in various phases of the attack and in different ways, making it more and more complex to defend against. So objectives, we kind of touched on this a bit as I went along, but in general, we have resource hijacking, which typically falls under the criminal group. It's not just cryptojacking, but any resources that can be used and abused. We're seeing a lot of SES abuse, a lot of email spam, and those type of things. Using resources for denial of service type attacks is also popular. Ransom and extortion, this is your like malwareless ransomware. It's getting access to your data, whether it's in your cloud service provider or it's in your SaaS application, and then either encrypting it or stealing it and extorting the victim for money to either recover it or make sure that it's not publicly disclosed. Data theft when it's not extortion. We didn't give too many examples of this, but in general, this is siphoning off data that can be used for spying purposes. And then along the lines of denial of service, we have disruption of services. So you could imagine a scenario where you have a company and maybe they have an important event going on, and a threat actor gets paid to disrupt their services during the event and impact their business. Okay, so now we're going to touch on this gray area of the shared responsibility model that I mentioned earlier. So in this slide, this is the example of the shared responsibility model with AWS. But in general, the idea is that the customer and the cloud service provider have an agreement of which pieces they need to store or they need to secure. And in the case of cloud service providers, in general, we secure our data centers and the software that runs on top of our servers. And then anything that you bring in, set up, and configure, you're in charge of securing. Now, this depends on the service, but in general, it's you secure your stuff, we'll secure our things. The problem is it seems like there's a black and white line where it crosses over from cloud service provider to the customer. But in reality, it's a lot more gray because sometimes vulnerabilities are discovered, and the fix requires the cloud service provider making a change on their end, but the customer also has to do something on their end as well to mitigate the threat. And that's where things start becoming difficult because maybe the customer wasn't aware of it, maybe they're focused on other things, or maybe the new change is very difficult and costly for the engineering team to migrate over to. So an example of that is the AWS Instant Metadata Service version 1. So if you recall 4 years ago, there was the Capital One breach. And essentially, the way this works is within AWS on their EC2 instances, you may need those instances to be able to access other parts of your infrastructure like S3 buckets. So you have a role tied to them. And how your application is able to assume those roles and get those permissions is through this instance metadata service. The issue that came about, though, is if an attacker gets on that resource, they can simply call it and get some temporary credentials. What further complicates it is if you're running an application that is a reverse proxy like a WAF. And if it is vulnerable to server-side request forgeries, then the attacker can remotely essentially trick the application into calling the metadata service and returning the result, thus getting access to temporary credentials. Now, the reason I bring this up as kind of an example is that breach occurred about 4 years ago. Amazon has taken a lot of steps to, one, develop version 2, which mitigates this particular attack vector. They've been putting on a lot of work in helping push folks onto it, encourage them to use it. But today, in October 2023, we're still seeing wide use of this 4-year-old attack path. So, for example, we published a recent blog on some Grafana vulnerability that was being used in the same manner to do SSFR and get access to these credentials. And the thing that really ended up sticking out the most about this is this was also the week that there was a very important curl vulnerability that was announced, and that kind of dominated the news cycles. And so the irony here is while a lot of folks were focused on this curl vulnerability, attackers in the wild were using 3-year-old vulnerabilities to capitalize on 4-year-old or even older attack paths. So this is why this gray area is so important to know about and understand the ramifications of. But that's just one example. There's many others. We did a little bit of research into a disclosed serverless S3 cross-tenant data access issue. This was quickly fixed by the service provider. But when we checked in on it about 6 months later, the accounts that we were monitoring, we noticed, only 30% of them had taken the corrective actions to mitigate this. So in this example, the fix was the customer needs to apply some explicit statements into the policies that they're attaching to these buckets. So it requires action on their part. And then as we see over time, it's easy for security teams to either miss this, or maybe it's costly for them to implement it, or the security team just can't advocate to get those applied. So here are two examples. There are several others, and I think that this will kind of be a focal point that as defenders, we're going to need to highlight and we're going to need to focus on going forward. Okay, so we'll kind of end this session with some mitigations. Some of them you'll have heard before, but hopefully there might be a couple new things in here that you can take back to defending your own cloud. In our ideal world, you have an endless budget for a world-class security engineering team, and they can build all the solutions that you need that are tailor-fit to your organization and your applications. But this is very difficult. This is a very long and costly journey. So for everyone else out there, here are a few different areas that we recommend focusing on. So ingress control, this is controlling what is accessing your environment from the internet. This one has been around for as long as computer security's been around, but it's still a difficult one to implement, and we know that this problem hasn't been fixed because we still see this mass scanning of vulnerabilities becoming highly effective and people breaking in through the front door. Now, a control that you may not know much about, but I highly recommend, as it essentially mitigates most of these malware-based attacks, is an egress control. So the idea being here is your servers can only talk to whitelisted external servers. The reason to do this is when you have a new 0-day come out, think of Log4j. A lot of these 0 days that are remotely executed post-exploitation are going to require a callback. And then that callback is going to start downloading malware in second stages, and then you get command and control. What this ultimately boils down to is if you limit where your servers can talk outbound to, then you can, even if you get exploited by the next 0 day, you effectively mitigate all the post-exploitation activities. Least privilege, that one's always going to be around. It can be very difficult as your accounts grow, but as you can see when we talked about the cloud service provider control plane, credential identity compromise is going to be your top threat. So the least amount of users and permissions that you can implement, the more that you can kind of contain the blast radius if something does occur. Another one put on the list is unphishable second factors. This one's important because a few years ago, we're trying to get everyone to use MFA. We also know that not all factors are created equal, and we see a number of attacks that are against like SMS and push notifications. What we're recommending here is using things like YubiKeys, things that use yourself as the security ID that you need to be there to access. This will give yourself another layer of security. And then last but not least, first step here, this international waters thing isn't going to be solved overnight. And I think the first thing is getting people to understand and be aware of where and how this can happen. We have a tendency to focus on what are the things that get a CVE ID and less so on what are the actions that have been taken by our cloud provider that we need to do something with. So a good starting point is making sure you have strong awareness of this. You understand where the communications come from your service providers, and you try and action those as quickly as possible. Last but not least, start thinking about your SaaS applications and how you can go a step further in securing those. There's SaaS security posture management solutions. A lot of SaaS providers are providing documentation on proper configuration. Least privilege is also very important in this area. It's easy to onboard a new app and then give everyone access and not worry about it. Also another area to look into is your connection brokers. So the reason I highlight this one separately is it's easy for this to get missed, as it doesn't typically fall under everyone's purview of what is my cloud, what are my workloads, what is the data I need to protect. And sometimes you need to protect the data that other folks have. Okay, great. So hopefully you found that this was helpful. And thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at james@lacework.com, and I'd love to hear from you. Thanks.
What a great presentation. Such a fun way to wrap up our MegaCast here today. I am already seeing the high fives, the thank yous coming in from all of you. And I am not surprised at all, because boy, have we had a day. It has been so much fun. Lots of information that we've covered, so many great presentations. And this one was really an awesome way to wrap up our day. I love getting to walk through each of those pillars and really seeing the considerations that you should have on your radar. If you are looking to dig in a little further with Lacework, and I think a lot of you are, one easy way to do that, again, click on the wish list. Click on the screen right now. Let Lacework know exactly how they can follow up with you. So you can do that right now. Larry, I love that. Larry says, thanks very much for stretching my brain today. Eric says, like drinking from a fire hose. I agree with both of those. We all got a mental workout today. We all got to stretch our brain muscles, flex those brain muscles, and even though it was a ton of information in that fire hose, holy, is it fun to kind of start to sort through and see what you could now do with all of these insights and all of these ideas. And that's where, again, these wish lists and then also the handouts tab is a great way to make sure that you've got those follow-ups. I do want to make a quick comment about the Lacework handout. We had to adjust. There was something that wasn't working right at the start, and so we refreshed it. So if anyone is trying to open the Laceworks handout and it's not opening a link for you, please do just give your browser a refresh, and then that handout will work for you. So the Lacework handout, again, is going to take you to get that SEC materiality framework. This is a downloadable framework, an absolutely great way to kind of continue this conversation that we just started with Lacework with James. So make sure you've got that opened, hold on to that, and spend a little time with that later today. All right, well, while you're doing that, while you're clicking on the wish list, while you're getting in any last questions or asks that you may have for the wonderful folks that have been here with us today, because again, we're getting all those questions to the teams after we wrap, so there's still time to get those questions in. And I am going to give away our very last prize, as well as go over the entire prize winners list. So we have one more $300 Amazon gift card and one more Microsoft Surface Pro 9. They are going to winners who are here live and present with us at the MegaCast today. So please do stay tuned. Stay tuned. That's the word I'm looking for. I got distracted by all the wonderful highs and hellos. You guys are being so positive. I lost track of what I was saying. Oh my goodness. Well, okay, let's give away a prize. So a $300 Amazon gift card today going to Latoya Jackson from New Jersey. Latoya, I'm sure you hear this all the time, but great name. Latoya Jackson from New Jersey, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card. A Microsoft Surface Pro 9 going to Christopher Bogart from Pennsylvania. Christopher Bogart from Pennsylvania. I'm going to read our entire winners list over today. We had a gift card going to Greg Butler from Massachusetts, a Surface Pro 9 to Joshua Griffith from Iowa, a gift card going to Ron Breyer from California, and a Surface Pro 9 going to Matthew Krebsky from Connecticut, a gift card going to Sean Campbell from Pennsylvania, and a Surface Pro 9 going to Russ Fischetti from California, a gift card going to Mike Ryan from Indiana, and a Surface Pro 9 going to Arthur Wong from California, a gift card going to Holden Gable from Nebraska, and a gift card going to Latoya Jackson from New Jersey, and then a Surface Pro 9 going to Christopher Bogart from Pennsylvania. What a winners list we've had here with us today. What a prize list. But hey, aren't we all winners, right? We all won today. I think we won collectively together. And speaking of winners, there will be some $50 Amazon gift cards going out to folks who asked the best question in each one of our sessions. We'll be following up with you about those, so stay tuned for all of that. And with that, my friends, we are going to bring it on home today. Now, if you are here on the MegaCast and thinking to yourself, this has been an awesome time and I would like to get involved, I'd like to tell a story here on the MegaCast, EcoCast, a summit, whatever you have in mind, we would absolutely love that. So shoot us a message at connect@actualtechmedia.com and we'll get that conversation rolling. Okay, well, here we are, our very last slide, our very last moments together, and on the EcoCast, I do want, or on the MegaCast, now I'm reading the EcoCast side. Boy, you guys have me all in a tizzy. My brain is all stretched out and lit up from such a great day here together today. I will tell you about the EcoCast in just a moment, but let's wrap up our MegaCast first. So I do want to start on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team by thanking our incredible speakers here with us today from KnowBe4, from Synology, Veeam, Commvault, Rubrik, and Lacework. What a crew. Thank you for making this entire MegaCast possible. But as I said, you know, and like I said, I keep getting distracted watching all these highs and thank yous and thanks and wows and congrats and all the awesomeness coming in to our chat here, because it just lights me up and makes me so happy to see this wonderful community that we have here with us. And so as always, my biggest thank you goes to all of you for taking time out of your day, for making space to have this conversation about ransomware. We dug into the pillars, we talked about prevention and mitigation and recovery. We got some best practices, what you need to be thinking about as you're building these strategies or enhancing those strategies in your organization. And as I said, I've just loved a great time we've had here today. We dug into some strongly held beliefs about DC and Marvel. We definitely got to detangle that a little bit between movies and graphic novels. I think there was a lot of opinions and hopefully everyone feels heard and represented in that conversation. Clearly, we will have to continue that conversation, as well as lots more talks about ransomware. There is so much more to dig into. I hope that you've all gotten something interesting out of the day today. I hope you feel a little bit better informed, maybe a little better equipped to tackle some of the solutions that you're looking to bring into your organization. Well, as always, I hope that I'll get to see you again soon. We've got an EcoCast coming up, supporting, extending, and protecting virtualized and containerized environments. That's tomorrow, my friends, Friday, February 9th at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Again, we're going to be talking about supporting, extending, and protecting virtualized and containerized environment. We've got Rubrik and Census here with us. It's going to be a great time, an awesome way to wrap up the week. The best way to start your Friday is to start it out with me on the EcoCast tomorrow. So come join me. We'll talk lots more about cool things, and you can share all your beliefs, strongly held or loosely held or otherwise, about Marvel and DC. I always want to hear from you. Well, thanks to all of you for being here with me. I cannot wait to see you again soon. And until I do, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day.